All right, folks, it is definitely hot here in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, it is definitely very hot out here in North Carolina. I just went outside, went out for a little bit of a lunch break, a late lunch break, and was outside. And I think they said the temperature in terms of the reading temperature was 90 degrees, but they were saying it could feel like 107. And based on what I felt out there, I'm not going to argue with them, but they're saying that we're in the middle of a heat advisory here in Durham and also in Wake and other counties in the south and east of North Carolina. And that alert is in effect from now until 7 p.m., according to the National Weather Service. So climate temperatures and high humidity, definitely we can get that high humidity here in the south, unfortunately, and we get used to it to some degree, but I don't know if I ever get used to it. And I've lived here most of my life, but it is definitely a little bit on the warm side. They are saying and urging the doctors are for us to drink plenty of fluids, stay in an air-conditioned room, and stay out of the sun. And definitely check up on those relatives and neighbors. Young children and pets should never be left unattended in a vehicle under any circumstance. That is definitely what they are recommending, and I can definitely understand that. So I'm thinking if that's what's going on today, it may even go on that way tomorrow as well. I ran into one of my younger friends and everything, and they're doing the whole virtual learning, and they were telling me that even though their son was very much into virtual learning, definitely understood about PlayStations and all the things that kids get into as far as the computers go, she was having to explain to him what Windows was, how Windows works, and all of that. So they was not having that much success in terms of actually getting them totally acclimated into the computer life, but they were trying their best to see what they could do. So that was very good news that I had from my friend Lexi. And like I said, her son is in the third grade. I believe it's the third grade that she told me he's in. And one of the things that she said that kind of surprised me was that apparently they're just kind of like not really grading the kids because of all the things that are going on. So they're definitely trying to educate the young folks, but they aren't really grading them in terms of giving them solid grades and all of that. So I'm thinking that some of these folks may actually be advancing from grade to grade, depending on how long this coronavirus pandemic lasts. I mean, we're already in a matter of several months going on, and it's just continuing to run on. And of course, we're also in the middle of the political season. I did notice that that current person that occupies 1600 was here in my fair state. So he was in here making some comments and things of that nature. So he actually went down to visit Wilmington to designate the city as a World War II heritage city on the 75th anniversary of the end of that particular war. So he spoke in front of the USS North Carolina, a former World War II battleship that's now a floating museum in Wilmington. And it was an invitation-only crowd, and definitely said that they were filling in seats outside the ship around 12:30 p.m., and almost none of them apparently were wearing masks. The seats were also set up closer than 6 feet from each other in violation of public health guidelines on social distancing during the coronavirus pandemic. He spoke for about 10 minutes, rallying against violent mobs of protesters during recent Black Lives Matter protests and using that he could use the force of the federal government to put down these protests. I think he had a similar message when he went to Kenosha. So he's definitely trying to do that whole law and order BS. And I'm just going to be blunt about it. It's very much BS and all of that. So that's what he was trying to do when he went down there to Wilmington. So a lot of folks are thinking that he is actually inciting things and not actually encouraging folks to do things on a positive nature. And I'm always shocked by some of the things that come out of that current person in 1600's mouth and some of the things that he says. But, you know, there are a lot of very important issues that are going on in our society. We know that we lost a great actor, the one of the stars of Black Panther recently, and that was all around colon cancer and things along that line. So I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Fola May, who is out of the Los Angeles area. So definitely I'm glad to have Dr. Fola May join us here on IBM.TV and on the show that we call the Online Dinner Party. That's the particular streaming platform that we use here. But I'm very glad that Dr. Fola May was able to join us and to talk about this very important issue. So definitely glad that you were able to join me and to speak on this issue for at least a little bit. Then we'll also have some other guests who will be joining as well. But this is a very important issue. So, and the one that is impacting a lot of folks. So, if you would just tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts on the Chadwick Boseman and the recent loss of his life because of his fighting the disease and everything. I understand that he was much younger than a lot of folks usually are when they get tested and things along those lines. So, if you would just share with our audience a little bit about your background and a little bit about your thoughts on colon cancer, and particularly in the African American and the Latin American communities.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry about the heat wave. It's actually heading in our way next. So over the weekend, we're going to be dealing with the same problem. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to speak today a little bit about colon cancer. I think we all were stunned when we heard the news about Mr. Boseman's death over the weekend. I don't know that we'll ever really resolve the sensation of loss that we're all feeling right now. He truly was a living cultural icon, and most certainly is now. But one of the things that I think we can do in this setting is continue his legacy in any way possible. And I think part of his legacy now is going to be improving education or knowledge about colorectal cancer, which is the combination of colon and rectal cancer.
Wow. And it seems like that's an issue that a lot of folks in our community, unfortunately, are not as aware of. I know that a number of times folks will think about prostate cancer. They'll definitely think about colon cancer. And of course, folks will think for you ladies about breast cancer, but it's hitting our communities, all of these cancers, too much. And I sometimes wonder if it's because of the fear in our communities about even going to doctors, and particularly doctors when you're dealing with that very sensitive parts of the body and everything. So could you speak to our listeners about why it's so important to go get yourself tested? I know that a lot of folks are being avoiding because of the fears of the doctor. And sometimes I think it's because of things as way back as the Tuskegee experiment and things along those lines. But I was just wondering if you could speak to those that might be having those fears, because I'm also thinking it's impacting what we're doing with COVID, because I think some people are not even going to get their COVID test for that reason.
Absolutely. And I think you hit it right on. I think that this is a multifactorial problem. I will say that a lot of people don't realize that colon cancer is the second most common cause of cancer-related deaths in the United States, and that's among all individuals. We think, as you mentioned, a lot about breast and prostate, and those get a lot of attention, but we also need to be paying attention to colon cancer. Colon cancer is unique in that it's not gender specific, so it's impacting men and women, and that's why our numbers can get very high. And as you alluded to, Blacks are suffering disproportionately. So African Americans are 20% more likely to get a diagnosis of colon cancer, and we are 40% more likely to die of colon cancer. And that's horrendous. We think that that's probably the result of many things, but part of it is that we are not getting the appropriate care. And some of that is on us as patients. Some of that is on our providers in the healthcare system that aren't always treating us fairly, as we've been discussing a lot, especially recently in the setting of COVID. But in my experience taking care of patients, and I did not provide care for Mr. Boseman, but I can speak about my experience taking care of patients, is that African Americans in particular are very hesitant to talk about, or regions of the body that are involve the rectum or the stool. There's also a lot of hesitancy, particularly among African-American men, we've seen in many studies that have been done, to pursue a colonoscopy, which is the procedure that we do to screen for colon cancer and to detect it early. So because of that, African-Americans are having symptoms that are concerning, and we are waiting too long to be seen by our doctor. And those are symptoms like blood in the stool, changes in the shape of the stool so that it becomes almost pencil shaped. Also new abdominal pain, new constipation, and then when the disease is very late, developing loss of appetite and weight loss. When those things happen, regardless of age, we need to be seen by a doctor. And I think for so long, we've been thinking of this as the disease of the elderly, that as we learned with Mr. Boseman, we're seeing this in people in their 30s and 40s. So when those symptoms happen at any point, you need to be seen. And certainly when you turn 45 as an African American, you need to be getting screened, even in the absence of symptoms.
And how often should folks be screened? Because I know sometimes folks will get screened once or maybe during a certain time of frame. But how often should you be screened? Should it be once every 5 years, once every 4 years, once every 2 years? So how often should the screenings be taking place?
The great thing about screening, it's recommended for everyone, but there are many different screening options. And we like to say that the best test is the one that gets done. So when you meet with your provider should explain to you the many options for screening. The most common is colonoscopy. That involves a long flexible tube with a camera and a light at the end. We give the patient general anesthesia so that they're asleep in a procedure room. And we use that camera to examine the walls of the colon for polyps, which we can remove pretty simply. For some populations, this can be challenging. You need to take a day off of work. Right. You have to drink the laxative the day before, which no one really enjoys. You need a person to drive you home after the procedure. And part of the disparities are just in the Latino community and in the African American community. You might not have the kind of job where you can take a day off. You might not have a family member who can take you to the health center and drive you home. So we know that's contributing. And for that reason, it's good that we have other screening tests. The one that I really like is called the fecal immunochemical test. We call it the FIT test, the FIT. Okay. This is a kit you can do at home. So we give you an envelope and it has a bunch of information in it. And there is also a small scraper. You put a sample of stool in the toilet bowl and you use that scraper to gather a small amount of that stool. You put that in a vial, a test tube, and that gets sent to a lab. It goes right into the mail. It goes to the lab. And in the lab, we can test that sample of stool for blood. If there's blood in that stool, then you certainly need to have a colonoscopy because that blood might indicate that you have a cancer. And that helps a lot of patients because you can do that test at any point in time, and only about 10% of people will have a positive result and will need the colonoscopy.
So there's a good shot that you can even have these kind of tests that are homemade tests. Now, would you get those at the hospital or would you get those at the pharmacy, or are they available? Where are they available at?
Those are recommended by your provider, and they're usually prescribed by your provider. They can typically give it to you in the clinic, and that test has to be done every year. So colonoscopies every 10 years. You asked me this earlier, and the FIT test or these stool-based tests are every 1 to 3 years. So a lot of people just say, I don't want to have to do that every year. Let me just go ahead and get this colonoscopy, and then I don't need to think about this for 10 years. But that's the longest possible interval. If I do a colonoscopy on a patient and they have a lot of polyps, you actually might need to come back in 3 years. But in general, most people will have no polyps, and then you don't need to come back for 10 years.
Now, the other thing that I know some people have always been interested in, I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but there was a time frame when before COVID and there was the diet craze and everything, that everybody was getting those medications that were supposed to be colon cleansers and things along those lines. So I was wondering, are those even effective? Do you recommend folks do those, or do you not a big fan of those at all? Because I just remember like a number of those weight loss kind of programs that would talk about these body cleansers, and I'm not sure that they're even effective. So you're the doctor, I'm asking you.
A lot of people want to try colon cleanses, and I think the reasons for doing it range from it just makes me feel lighter and better to a weight loss approach. There actually isn't very strong data that there are benefits to colon cleanse, although some patients will state that they just feel better doing that occasionally. I don't typically recommend them to patients. What I will say is that the medication we give you for your colonoscopy is a colon cleanse. So if you want a free colon cleanse, just sign up for your colonoscopy. We'll give you your colon cleanse, give you your colonoscopy, clear you from cancer, and then you can say you had both in one shot.
Yeah, this sounds like a great way to handle it. And that sounds like that's a very effective means of doing it. I do hope that more and more people that are listening will try to take this advice and go ahead and get that test. Because I know that I've even got my uncle's sister was a former anesthesiologist. So I know a lot of folks are concerned about that aspect of the colon cleanse as well, because they know they've got to go under and things of that nature. But when I talk to folks that have gone through the process, they're like, I counted to like 10. And by the time I got to like maybe 7, I was already out. And then when I woke up, they had told me I was done. So like I said, I'm thinking the process itself is probably hours, but as a doctor, you would be able to tell me what the actual process takes. But as far as the patient's concerned, it feels like just a matter of a few minutes because you're under and then you wake up and you doctors are done.
Absolutely. And most patients, after we wake them up from the procedure, I go over to the other side of the bed and I say, everything was fine. And they say, when are you going to get started? As though they missed the entire 30-minute procedure. So those medications are strong enough to make you comfortable. The worst part of this really is the day before, the night before, when you have to do the laxative to clean out the colon. Coming into the medical center the day of to have the procedure is pretty benign. And as you mentioned, people sleep right through the procedure and you get to wake up with a better bill of health. So it ends up being beneficial.
And would you just tell our listeners and everything, not just the colon, but just the importance of coming to the doctors on a regular basis? Because I know not just with the colon, but just physical fitness and everything, that a lot of times we do have fears of doctors. I'm thinking that maybe COVID is even impacting this as well, because a lot of folks are not sure what's going on with the vaccine and other things. So I just wondered if you could just speak to folks that are listening and might not be that comfortable with current modern medicine and want to feel comfortable when they go to a doctor. So I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. And I think this is important all the time, but especially during COVID. I recommend that all individuals see a doctor about once a year at a very minimum, and that's for healthy individuals. Other people who have chronic medical conditions, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, will need to see their doctor more often. But at least once a year, you want to go in for your annual examination. There's been a lot of hesitancy in the Black community about seeking medical care, and that's rightfully so, because for years and in several settings, we were treated unfairly, unethically by the healthcare system. So a lot of people talk about this hesitancy as though it's something that we've imposed upon ourselves, when the reality is that we are rightfully hesitant about seeking care at these health centers, many of which are still standing, are the same ones that abused us. So that is a factor, and I understand that. So the best way to get around that is to find someone who you have confidence in. And I have people who are emailing me, texting me all the time saying that I haven't seen a doctor in years. Can you help me find a Black doctor? And for many people, that's the level of comfort that they need to go to the doctor. And that's fine. And you shouldn't have hesitancy about that. You should contact your medical center or the local clinic, and you should ask for a Black doctor. For those people who don't feel that that's that important, you want to just find a place that you think is high quality, and you want to find a primary care doctor who can follow you over time. And that individual will refer to you on to specialists like a gastroenterology, like me, who will do your specialty care. Now during COVID, a lot of people are delaying their care because of the stay-at-home policies. Right. And although COVID is a primary concern, we need to be safe, we also cannot delay our cancer screenings, because the reality is that if you were due for screening in March when COVID started and you decided to wait until COVID ended, you might be waiting for over a year to do your colonoscopy. And in over a year, you can go from stage 1 colon cancer to stage 4 colon cancer. And let me tell you what that means. When I diagnose someone at stage 1, I can tell them that there's a 90% chance that they will be surviving this disease. Right. When I diagnose someone at stage 4, that chance of survival is 11%. So finding these cancers early is essential. And because of that, we cannot delay going in for screening when we're due.
Wow. Yeah. And I know a lot of folks are definitely still scared of going to the doctors because they're afraid of what might be going on with COVID and how COVID is being treated. But every doctor that I've talked to, and I actually live near Duke Hospital, they seem to be trying to do everything that they can to try to make sure that the visit is definitely a safe visit. They're definitely doing the screenings before you go in for COVID. Actually, I just had a friend of mine that just had a surgery for his rotator cuff. But I remember that before he had that surgery, he was definitely going through different procedures to make sure that he was being treated well, even before having the surgery. So
absolutely.
I'm thinking that
we're testing everyone for COVID before the procedure. We're keeping our providers safe. We're wearing the appropriate PPE so that we're not spreading the disease. And in March and April, we were still learning about COVID, and we didn't have a lot of those safety protocols in place. But now every health system across the country is using these safe protocols. You should feel comfortable going in and getting a colonoscopy if you're due.
Yeah, sounds like that's something that folks need to be doing on a regular basis. What are some of the other screenings that folks should be thinking about on a regular basis? I know colon is one. I know that the mammogram is one for women and everything. But what are some of the other screenings that you, as a specialty doctor, think folks should be doing on a regular basis?
Yeah, so there are a few cancers that we screen for, and there are also a few chronic diseases that we screen for. So with cancers, women certainly should be getting breast cancer screening, and that can start anywhere between age 40 and 50. If you have a family history, it's earlier. For men, prostate cancer is also a consideration, and that depends on your risk. And so that warrants a discussion with your provider. But African American men have a high burden of prostate cancer, so screening is often in our community. And then, as I mentioned, colon cancer, which impacts both men and women, we recommend for everybody, for African Americans at age 45, for everyone else at age 50, unless you have a family history of colon cancer, and then we start at age 40. So again, worth a discussion with your provider about the best time to start, and worth a discussion with your family about whether you have a family history of all of these cancers. The newest one on the block is lung cancer screening. We're starting that for individuals who have a history of tobacco use. So if that's consistent with your history, you will want to talk to your provider about whether you qualify. And then the other main things that we screen for on a regular basis are chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension. This is why the primary care provider is essential, because that's the individual who's going to go through all of your health maintenance and going to make sure that you are being checked from head to toe, everything from your cardiovascular state due to your cancer screening.
Wow. And how you mentioned the ages that they should start. Is there an age that they should stop at? Do you stop screening at like 70, or my dad is 80? Is there an age that you should stop the screening at?
That's a good question. We typically for colon cancer will screen between the ages of 45 to 75. If you're very healthy and if you're on board, we will extend it to 85, but we don't screen beyond 85.
Okay, so it could go up to 85. So he still might have another couple of years to go. Because like I said, he just turned 80 and everything. And and in terms of family history, you definitely do need to keep track of your family history. Because I know a lot of folks don't even pay attention to why folks have fought different illnesses or why they've passed or whatever. Because I know there have been a number of cases where folks will find out that their relative died of a type of cancer, but they never knew that that's what it was until they started digging further in. So you are thinking that as a rule, we should try to keep track not just of our own family history, but of our family members' history as well, like our immediate family.
Absolutely. And particularly with colon cancer, again, because it has this ick factor and this embarrassment, and especially within the African American community, we don't pass along that family history. So we need to address this. And African Americans, in addition to everybody else, needs to become much more comfortable talking about family history and passing that along to children and the children of their children. Without that, we will underscreen and we will continue to have people dying from this disease.
Well, we definitely got to find ways to stop it. And I'm sure that Chadwick's death will definitely get more and more people thinking about getting tested on a regular basis. Dr. May, what made you decide that you wanted to go in this particular field? Because it's not something that you would usually think that somebody would want to go into. So what about this particular field made you have a passion for it? Because you definitely have a passion for this kind of specialty. Yes,
thank you for asking that. I was always interested in diseases that affect how we digest food. I always joke that, the joys in life are being able to eat and enjoy food. And when I was going through my medical training, I saw the stress of patients who just couldn't do those simple things. I've always thought that the liver and the GI tract were fascinating. I call the abdomen the black box, and you're always trying to figure out what's going on and what ailments patients have. So that naturally led me into gastroenterology. And then when I started studying gastroenterology, I started hearing about disparities in colon cancer. And it was something that, despite my previous years of training, had never heard about. And as an African American, seeing people in my race die from this unnecessarily was especially troubling. So I decided at that point that I would dedicate my career to understanding why this is happening and to increasing screening rates, particularly in African Americans, because we have the highest burden of disease.
Wow. And why do you think that disparity exists? Like I said, and are we improving in that disparity? Because I know historically there's always been that disparity that existed among African Americans and other parts of society, as well as Latin Americans and other parts of society. But as a doctor, could you explain why those disparities exist and how you think we're doing in terms of improving those disparities?
Those disparities have improved since the 1980s. We've done better, but they haven't completely closed the gap. So African Americans are still more likely to get colon cancer, more likely to die from it. Why? That's complicated. We think that a lot of it might have to do with lifestyle factors. Mm-hmm. We also know that there's probably a role of how we are cared for in the healthcare system. So specifically, when we talk about lifestyle factors, things like diets that are high in processed meat, red meat, other preservatives, processed foods in general are associated with colon cancer. Diets that are low in fiber are associated with colon cancer. And unfortunately, meaty diets that are low in fiber are more common in Black Americans. We also know that over time, Black Americans have been less likely to utilize screening. And because screening is very effective in reducing colon cancer rates, we weren't getting the benefits of that intervention. So that's playing a role as well. And then unfortunately, even when we are diagnosed, we aren't getting the same treatment as white American counterparts. So there's problems. It's not just on the patient level. It's also, as I was saying earlier, at the provider level and the health system level of unfair treatment.
So you're saying that we're going to have to change our diets as well, because I know that a number of those things, a lot of us don't like to give up on, like our fried chicken and some of the other stereotypical kinds of foods that we enjoy. But it sounds like you're saying that for our health benefits, we might need to find ways to cook those foods, but cook them in a healthier way.
We need to change a lot about what we do. We need to eat healthier. We need to exercise more. We need to smoke less. These are things, unfortunately, that are habitual in our community and that are causing cancer, but they're also causing heart disease, hypertension, lung disease. So for many reasons, we'll see the benefit of changing these behaviors.
So you would urge people to do more exercise. I know I've got to do more of that. I used to do a regular walk at one of our local parks, and then I stopped doing that. So I've actually got to get back into that habit of getting back to that walk, because actually I was enjoying the walk, seeing Mother Nature and enjoying some of the Mother Nature around the trail. But I know that I got lazy and concentrated on the work environment, because I think that that's what we're seeing even on the education front, because if I remember correctly, you've got kids, and I know that you heard me talking earlier about my friend that I ran into and their son and everything. So I think that unfortunately, because of COVID, we're seeing more kids even being involved in this virtual world, which means that a lot of us are being sedentary. So I think that as a doctor, you would probably recommend that we at least get outside and enjoy the fresh air and go for a walk, a bike ride, a jog, or something along those lines.
Absolutely. And you mentioned physical activity. It's true. Physical activity and obesity are linked to colon cancer and to other cancers. We need to get our kids active too. So grab your kids, grab your grandkids, go outside, be active, even during COVID. I'm concerned that the obesity, that the inactivity will get worse during COVID as well. And all of these things are linked. So anything that we can do to improve our lifestyles will improve our overall health. And we're also teaching those habits to our children, which is great.
Yeah, we definitely got to start teaching those habits more to our kids, because we're not seeing enough of that. I don't know how you're doing with your kids in terms of trying to get them engaged in exercise, because I know that here a lot of times, I don't have any kids, but I've got my two nephews, and I know that sometimes they get lazy. They're in school, and by the time the day is over, they've not really done the physical exercise. So how are you actually getting your folks involved in trying to do the physical exercise on a regular basis?
Yeah, the struggle is real. I have 3 little kids, and all under 10, and we have had to force them to go outside. Neighborhoods are different. Life is different. When I was a kid, you went out on your bike and you disappeared for 3 hours and you came back for dinner. We don't all necessarily live in neighborhoods where it's safe to do that anymore. So we have to try a little bit harder to sneak that physical activity in, on top of the fact that there's a deadly virus that's circulating. So what have we done? We have mandated that they come outside and ride their scooters when we get home from work. We've taken family trips to the park and done sprint racing across the park just to get them up and running around. And we've just encouraged them that when they're on breaks from their Zoom classes to actually go outside and kind of do what they would normally do during a recess if they were in school.
Right. And just on the different subject, but what is you hearing about how the COVID is coming, and do you think there's any light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think that we will see a break anytime soon in terms of being able to get back into a normal situation? Because I know I was talking to a friend of mine on another platform, and they were saying that they think that we could be in this mess for another 2 to 3 years, but I'm hoping not, because I don't know that folks can put up with this and their economic plight if we don't get out of it in the next year or two. But I was wondering, as one is over there at UCLA, what you've heard about how things are going and what we can expect.
Yeah, no, I'm not a COVID expert, but I think just from my perspective as a physician and as a public health scientist, I'm concerned as well. I don't know how long we'll be in this, but certainly we'll be in it for quite a bit longer. I think a lot about what we're hearing now about people potentially getting the virus twice. I'm also concerned that we haven't found an effective therapy. I think the low testing rates is a concern in this country. And also we're about to hit flu season, and there's a concern that the combined impact of flu and COVID is going to be a problem for our healthcare system. So I have a lot of concerns. I don't think until we get a virus that we know is effective that we'll be truly out of this. And even at that point, getting the virus to everyone, making sure that everyone takes it. So I do think we have quite a bit of time before COVID is behind us.
Yeah, and personally, I think that we have to get certain people that are not helping the situation out of office, but that's just my personal opinion because I think that they're not doing a good job with their health policy. So I think we need to get somebody in with more solid health experience because right now it seems like we're kind of like going, trying to solve the problem, but it's like we're going behind in the process. It's like going one step forward and 3 steps backwards. It seems to
Absolutely.
be the way things are going.
And leadership is the key. So we're always looking for better leadership. And I think that hopefully we'll have better directives on how we as a nation can get over this.
Yep. Well, I'm so glad you were able to join me on the online dinner party and everything, the show that we do here on IBM.TV. And I was glad to meet you through Sri and everything. So just really quickly, I know that I can only have you for a few minutes and it's already close to 4:30 and everything. But that being said, you talk about how you got into colon cancer, but how did you get into the medical profession in general? Were you a family of doctors or is it something that was new to you and you just had a passion of as a kid? Or were you the one that was always had issues or thought about being a doctor even as a teenager or a preteen?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. I think it would take a while to answer. But as I self-reflect, so I have a father who's also a physician. He's a general surgeon. He immigrated to the United States a few years before he started medical school here, and then he stayed in the U.S. And so I was raised under his care and fell in love with the work that he does. And as I get older, I can admit that I did try to follow in his footsteps to some extent, but did strongly influence my desire to go into science and in public health.
Yep. I know how that can be. I did not have any direct scientists in my family, but my grandfather was a biologist and was definitely the person that North Carolina Central University biology department is named after. So it's the lead biology department. And my dad, even though he's not a scientist in the true sense of the word, he's always got that inquisitive mind. He's passed it on to my nephews, and he incorporates science into his artwork because he's an artist with photography and different other things. So he'll take pictures of like insects, lost art, but there is definitely some scientific stuff that's included in there. So definitely have some scientific framing of some of the things that I do, even though I'm more into journalism and the cultural world. So definitely have a great deal of respect for those that have gotten into the science field and things of that nature. In addition to the colon advice that you would give people, one of the things that we love doing on this show, as well as on all my platforms, is give folks a chance to share their words of positivity and things that they would like to encourage people when we're going through so much in society, whether it's the things around race relations, whether it's the things around health or economy. We just love hearing positive words from folks that can share those positive thoughts. So if you've got some words of positive encouragement, we would love to hear those from you.
I think after this week, hold your loved ones tight.
That's a great bit of advice. We definitely need to hold those loved ones tight because there's no telling when things may happen that are of a negative impact. I know that one of our IBM TV folks was visiting their family at home in the Louisiana area. So they were there when that hurricane hit. And the last time we heard from them, their power was out, and that was the only thing that was really impacting them. But I know that we were very much concerned for them because they were right there in the path of where the hurricane went. So you've been there in Los Angeles for how long, and what are some of the other places that you were living at? Because I think you were also from the Northeast, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from Los Angeles. I grew up here, but I did most of my school and training on the East Coast, and then I came back here in 2011 and have been here since.
Good. Well, thanks, Dr. May, for joining me. I'm so glad that you were able to get us and have some conversations. You definitely gave us some great insight, and that's why I wanted to invite you to come on the online dinner party. I know that you got to bounce off and get ready to take care of your patients and all of that. So I definitely want to thank you for joining me and definitely engaging us in this very powerful conversation that we need to have today. So I know you got to take care of your patients as well as hospital business. So thanks for being on, and I hope to get you back on in the very near future to share more information with our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
No problem.
Bye.
Yeah. So that was Dr. Fola May sharing with us some very important thoughts around a very important issue. We know that a number of folks are definitely paying attention to this very important issue that is going on in society. So definitely I was glad to have Dr. Fola May on, and definitely shared some very insightful thoughts around colon cancer and how that is impacting our community and our society. So definitely I'm glad that folks are over there listening. I did have somebody that left us a comment as well, so I'm going to put that on so folks can see what the comment was and what folks had to say and all of that. So definitely it's great seeing folks making comments and sharing their thoughts. So definitely glad to have that go on and to continue that conversation. So definitely we'll be joining and having other guests that will be joining us very shortly. So definitely glad to have folks join us here on the show, and want folks to definitely continue joining the show as we continue having amazing conversations. So it was great having Dr. Fola May on, and she gave us some great insight into her thoughts. So definitely glad to have her on and for her to share her thoughts with us. So I know a number of folks are also been paying attention to other things going on in the community and ways that they can help. So definitely glad to have that. And we see that somebody else has joined and made some comments as well. So Xanet Oakley is checking us out and letting us know that they saw some good information, and we're glad to be joined by none other than Dr. Fola May. So, and I see that Today in North Carolina History also has some things that they wanted to share with us as well. So definitely we're having some great conversation. Hope that others will continue to join these amazing conversations, and that we'll be waiting for a few more of our other guests that will be joining us shortly as well. And by the way, it's the online dinner party, so we'll be giving you some clues as to our mystery guest. We will have a mystery guest today also, and that'll be some folks that'll be giving some information. So I've got to share some information with our folks so that they can try to guess who the mystery guest is. So we've got a couple of mystery guests. So one of them is a mystery guest that is an international mystery guest. And this is one of the clues that was given if you will read the bottom. So this is what somebody said about our mystery guest. So definitely keep that in mind. And we've got some great mystery guests, and we will reveal who they are, or you can try to tell us who they are in the comments if you've got any idea who the mystery guest might be. So definitely keep those mystery guests going. Some of them we may stroll the clues, and some of them we may just put out their information this way. So if you look, that's one of the clues that's in the comment box right there that is not scrolling, and underneath is another scroll about our mystery guest. So read the clues, try to figure out who the mystery guest is. One of them is an international mystery guest, and the other one is not. So definitely keep that in mind and follow the clues. And then definitely, if you can tell us who the mystery guest is, let us know in your comment feed, and we will figure out who that mystery guest is. And hopefully we'll get some prizes going for you so that you can enjoy the prizes. But we've got two mystery guests that will be revealed at the end of the show. So right now we are giving you some clues about the international mystery guest, and you see that that is a great international mystery guest, and we are checking out who they are, and hopefully you'll be able to figure out the clues and tell us if you can answer the mystery guest and all of that. So that is one of the mystery guests, the international mystery guest, and I will have a national mystery guest also. So we will have a mystery guest revealed during the course of this particular show. So, and I'm waiting to hear from Reverend Carl Kenney. He should be popping in very shortly so that we can have a conversation with him about social justice and things along that line. So definitely keep your eyes on the scroller, and maybe sometimes I won't have the scroller on all of the clues, but between the scroller and just some flat out clues like this one, then you can try to figure out the mystery guest. So like I said, there is a mystery guest on the show. It will be revealed at about the 6:45, 6:50 hour. So definitely keep that in mind, and hopefully y'all will be able to figure out our mystery guest and have a great conversation as to who they are, and maybe you can figure it out and reveal it to me. So like I said, just leave me a comment. Tell me who you think the mystery guest is, and then we'll also wait for a few more of our guests also. So definitely just keep that in mind. I told one of my friends that I would be having a mystery guest, and that would be one of the clues what folks are seeing at the bottom scroller about a lion and a tiger. So that's one of the clues of one of the mystery guests is a lion that was named Tiger. So keep that in mind and try to figure out who the mystery guest is. And then we'll just go from that line and we'll keep this thing rolling right along. Once again, I do want to thank Dr. Fola May for joining us and giving us some great insight and things along that line. So definitely now I see that Reverend Kenney has joined me, and it's good to have Reverend Kenney in the house with me.
Brother?
So Reverend Kenney is there and doing good. How are you doing, Reverend Kenney?
Oh, it's a beautiful day, man. Stop calling me Reverend.
All right. How you doing, Carl? I got the book.
Awesome, brother.
Good. Well, I had the book. You'll be glad to know that as long as I've known you, I had not bought your copies of your books, but I now have both copies of both books. So I've got both of your books. I'm waiting for the next book to come out. So I've definitely got a copy, and I'm looking forward to. I've read part of it, got to read more of it. But to those that are watching IBM TV that don't know about you, I've always known you as being an activist and a great activist here in our community, but not just here. You're also originally from Missouri and have got that activism blood running in your veins, running through your veins. That activism running through your veins, and it has been running there for a number of years. So, like I said, IBM.TV is an international platform run by Nick Palvedo and Kim Calhoun, and they brought me on. But I was just wondering if you could just talk a little bit about your activism roots, because, like I said, I've known you to be an activist as long as you've been in Durham, but I'm thinking you started that when you were at the University of Missouri.
Well, the activism roots is kind of rooted in my mama. My mother. She got that personality. She's born in 1936, but she has that kick butt personality where she'd always take on causes. She attacked some crack dealers in the neighborhood. She started a homeless shelter. My mother, one day, she was driving around and she saw some homeless people and came back home and told my daddy we needed to do something about it. And she opened up a homeless shelter called Dorsey's House of Love. It comes from my mother, and of course, Mark, as children of the 60s, and we grew up in an era where protest was part of the DNA of Black folk growing up. We grew up with the Black Panther Party, Martin, Malcolm, the long list of people, who fought for justice and peace. So it's part of who we are, and we couldn't culturate it to do that. So, of course, growing up in Missouri, you were at Marquette. It's probably the same circumstances where Midwestern life kind of causes you to have to do something to just create some peace for people who are marginalized and not being heard. So it's just it's part of what it meant to be part of my family.
Yeah, and like I said, you've been following that legacy for a number of years, and I know it's like to follow a legacy of some other folks that have got that history of being activists, and then you follow in their footsteps. But you've done such a great job, and then even your kids are following in your footsteps and doing a number of activism things. So we're actually in multiple generations with you, because like I said, I know that you are very much a fan of your dad and a fan of your moms, like you just mentioned. And then we're seeing the great work that your sons and daughters and others are doing in your family. So it's almost like a continual legacy that is going on to the next generation. I've actually just been impressed with our youth leadership, whether it's here in Durham, Joshua Gunn, or Pierce Freelon, who I know just got appointed to the city council. But it just seems like our young leaders are actually taking the ball and really running with it, even further than I would argue our generation has done.
Yeah, I think they're starting to pick up the mantle, and in many ways, we were sort of cradled into a deep sleep for a couple of years. Our generation, of course, we started with this activist mentality, but we're the affirmative action babies as well. We entered into these places of comfort where we bought into this idea that if we just go to these institutions, we get a piece of the pie and come out and make a living, become successful monetarily, then we made it. And I think our kids are beginning to see there's more to it than that. While serving as a professor at the University of Missouri, that was like protest center. Missouri was protest center for about 3 years. We had the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, which steered the protest on campus. And the students on campus are just fed up with the deep silence coming from the administration. It was triggered by them crying out for some sort of help, and the administration not conceding the fact that they needed more than just press releases about "we hear you." They needed actual changes on the campus of the University of Missouri, and of course that led to a hunger strike by one of our graduate students, followed by the football team threatening not to play, and it forced the resignation of our university assistant president. And I was in the middle of all of that as a person consulting the president and the chancellor as a column writer, while at the same time trying to keep a keen eye on the community, and being a person who was born in that city, also being very concerned about how the residents were impacted by student protests. That happens a lot where students come into a community. We see it here at Duke, another university, probably saw it in Marquette, where people come in, students come in, they make some noise, and then they're gone. And the community's left with the rumble. They're left to try to repair what's created by that protest. I was concerned about that in Missouri. It's young people are beginning to shake things up in a different kind of way. One of the things I noticed in Ferguson was the traditional places where activism takes place. Traditionally we think about this is the work of the church, and being a cleric. It's sort of assumed that the church leadership will take ownership of protest. And what I discovered is that the young people said, "The hell with y'all. We don't want to hear what you have to say. You haven't done a damn thing for a long time." So there's like a shifting in consciousness in our communities. I am encouraged by the young people in Durham, North Carolina. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen now with the new appointment of Pierce Freeline, who's 7 years old. We have a state senator, Natalie Murdoch, who's the same age. And we have these young people who are starting to stand up and speak. And there's a bit of a clashing of, the old versus the new. But it's a good time. It's a good time to be engaged in these type of conversations. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all that.
Yeah, because one of the things I'm wondering about, and I wanted to know your take on it, is I'm hearing so many people talk about systematic racism and how this has been an issue that needs to be taking place. I've been of the opinion that this is something that's been going on for a number of years, but now it's become the issue of bad, for lack of a better term. So I just wanted your thoughts on that. Is it something that we can actually address and make changes in, or just something that's going to happen and it'll become like the issue of the day, kind of like the Me Too movement was, and then that'll kind of like fade away, and then we won't see real changes? Because that's one of my beefs, is that we come up with these issues, but there's no seems to be a coordinated plan of action. So I think we've got some sort of coordinated plan of action.
What we're seeing with all these movements, be it Me Too or the police, the movement around the criminal justice system, is we have a new vocabulary to communicate all this. So our generation, was Marxism. We were looking at capitalism. There are these efforts and pockets of Black community to attack structural, the structural pieces. Of course, I was split with Dr. King and, SNCC, but right now what we're seeing is quite different. Is we have a vocabulary. And we have theory. There's actual the critical race theory. With Derek Bell, we launched this critical race theory. We have ways of like pushing beyond the typical conversation about race and racism. We can talk about white supremacy. We can talk about implicit bias and institutionalized racism. We have a vocabulary that kind of labels what we've known to be real, but didn't really know how to disattack it. So now we have tools in the toolbox that help frame the conversation in a different kind of way. With Me Too, it's the same thing. You talk about misogyny, when we talk about patriarchy. There's a vocabulary that changes the way we can talk about all these issues. I was in conversation earlier today about race and poverty in Durham and how to take the next step. I think what we're seeing now, that communities are really they're doing the work. Their homework is being done, especially in white spaces where they're studying what it means to be an anti-racist, those kind of terms, anti-racism, and what it means to claim your white privilege. So I'm just noticing a lot of way people are engaging in those kind of like theoretic talks. My conversation earlier today is that we got to be careful not to be seduced in just having the parlor room conversations about these issues. We really begin to think about how to move it from a scholastic conversation to actual theory, from beyond theory to actual praxis.
Right.
But my work with Liberation Station and the Underground Church is around trying to create ways of moving the needle theologically. Because it's always been my view that a lot of these concerns that we have around race and poverty, and for me, there's a marriage that was made. There's this unholy marriage in America between capitalism and white supremacy that is managed through the church. So like church is the vehicle where white supremacy and capitalism is rude to marginalized Black people. So for me, the best way to deal with that is kind of deconstructing the conversation around religion. So where we are now is we have the vocabulary. We have the research has been done post Dr. King. Dr. King was just, let's all get along and make it better community. Right. Now we're beginning to see that, there's some layers of some stuff that we have to dig down. You got to dig deeper, beyond the idea of moral good. There's Billy Graham, was all about getting everybody saved, being saved. If everybody come to Jesus, we can roast some marshmallows and sing Kumbaya. Everything will be okay. But we're discovering now that it's deeper than that. And so these the battles that we're finding politically are around those kind of theological questions. So I would just say to you that, what we have now is we have the research. Like the research is done, and that that's the credit to some of the younger people who came post 1960s, who were grappling very hard around what is all of this, where all this come from. This is the credit of African American studies programs like we had at UNC. The great scholars across the country who are looking at the disciplines. Also, they're looking at intersectionality, how these things connect. What's the relationship between psychology and sociology and history and religion and law? A lot of good work is being done. And to the young people.
We're seeing some amazing work done. Could you talk to folks just a little bit about your thoughts of what you mean and other people mean when they talk about liberation theology? I know I've mentioned that to some folks and they look at me like they don't understand what the term means. I've got a pretty good idea, but just for our larger worldwide audience, could you give some ideas of what liberation theology is?
Well, the basic driving force of liberation theology, it involves this theological ideal around the authority of the scripture. Okay. What is the authority that molds how we think about God, theo, God and ology, things about God. With what we call praxis theology or liberation theologies, all begin with the idea that it's the community that creates the text for the envisioning of what it means to be the people of God. So it's what evangelical theology does, or with Orthodox theology does. It uses a biblical text as the authority. Yeah. What liberation theologies do is they consider how the community interprets the text from their own human condition. So what Black liberation theology does is it views the text from the perspective of the Black experience in America. What I'm doing is to embrace both Black theology and womanist theology, because it's important that we think about how Black women are viewed in the text. So eisegesis, we're actually bringing to the text the human experience. And that's where we build it, build the ideas. For me, there is a battle between evangelical mindset with the Black church. A lot of it is biblical based. We call it biblicist. It's Bible based. And what liberation does is it looks at that experience, and we have this battle between the two. For me, there's not a conflict there, because when I read the text within its proper historical context, then I see that, as James Cone would say, that God is God of the oppressed. And since Black folk are oppressed, then God must be Black. So that's basically the idea that God is involved in the liberation of those who are oppressed. That Jesus enters into human history for the purpose of liberating the oppressed. That Jesus doesn't enter into human history just for the sake of creating a moral idea, that y'all need to stop screwing each other. You all need to stop getting drunk, or y'all need to peel up your baggy pants and act like you got some damn sense. That what God enters into human history is to call the poor to a place of liberation. God is God of the poor, those who are marginalized. And so that's the real basic for liberation theology. I'm also part process theologian. So, I'm a hybrid of Black liberation, feminist, womanist, and process. And that kind of frames how I look at what it means to be the church. Incidentally, for me, I'll just add this piece to it. I know I'm rambling a bit, but for me, part of the struggle has been embracing the idea of what it means to be Christian.
Right.
Do I claim or continue to claim, given my the way I envision what it means to be the people of God, does a label of Christian work for me? And I'm beginning to think more and more that I'm no longer Christian, but I am following the teachings of Christ. So there's a little difference there between me. I'm thinking through what that looks like when you say that. When you say that out loud for people, it engenders a whole lot of thoughts about, well, he going to hell, those kind of things. But it's making more of a statement about it's making more of a statement around the critique of the way we think about church. At the same time, I wanted to do is to honor and respect how Black faith is a cultural reality.
Right.
The thing we love about the Black church is and how it supports our need for mental health. It's a therapeutic experience to listen to the gospel choir sing. To hear the preacher get into a deep rhythmic hum. And the clapping and all that takes place within Black worship is a cultural reality that has to be juxtaposed against what it means to be a theological force. So when I can claim the church as a cultural entity, but at the same time be critical of what it means to be church as a theological, interpreting theological ideas.
One of the things I've noticed just really quickly is that if you go, and I think that I saw a special on one of the networks sometime back, me and my dad and my younger brother were watching it. But if you go and study the religions, whether they're Western or Eastern, it's my opinion that they all pretty much have the same core beliefs. They might have some extremists on both sides, but the core belief is basically that kind of like love thy neighbor as you would love yourself, and a lot of the other things that are very core to all of the faiths. So it seems to me that that's where part of the problem exists within the religious world, is there's too much division, even though a lot of times it's the same message. And that's one of the things I've always loved about you, Carl, is that you're not afraid to go out and reach to your Buddhist brothers, reach out to your Jewish brothers, your brothers of other faiths, and just find that common ground. Because whenever I read the books or study the books, they all seem to be very much based on a commonality.
Well, I don't think that the truth is limited to the teachings of Christ. So the truth is transcendent of a specific theological idea. You know, there's truth in many places, and to say that is not condemning of Christian ideas. That where Christians are quick to claim that Jesus is the only way, but that's not to exclude the possibility that there are ways of accessing Christ that are beyond what Jesus says. That Jesus is affirming what you find in other places. I think for me, when it comes to a lot of my work, Mark, that there seems to be like a fear when it comes to the way we talk about religion. Or when we talk about morality, there seems to be fear. Like when we look at the most homophobic, it's like the teaching against LGBTQI. In many ways, it's like the fear that if people hear it too much, they're going to become gay. It's like we can make a person gay by what we believe. It sounds that way. And the same thing with when it comes to like embracing other ideas. That if we give people permission to think about what it means to like embrace some Buddhist ideas. I mean, I've got a great love for Buddhism, right? Also, I can see God in Islamic thoughts, and I'm definitely going to see God in Judaism, and I can also affirm people who don't believe in anything. I mean, I'm definitely can see spirituality in the West African religions. I mean, how do we not do that as people who are part of the African diaspora? We've got to figure out, how we got here, and so part of me for liberation theology is also looking into how we translate the teachings of white Christianity and make it something different. What we have in Black faith is not the same as white Christianity. It's not the same thing. It's different. It's culturally different. It is theologically different. And that is in part, that there's like an attack of that. Like when we look at voodoo, people want to, call that black magic, but that's part of the tradition. So for me, Mark, I think part of being a believer of anything is honoring that others can freely believe something different, and that we don't have to cast them into a hot place for eternity. We can lovingly embrace people with different ideas. I'm learning to embrace and love Republicans. It's been hard, my brother.
I understand.
To love and embrace Republicans. And they are making that easier because of Republicans who are coming on the right side of this election. It's easier to do that. I find it very complicated to love and embrace Trump supporters. But one thing I will not do is label them as Antichrist.
Right.
So there is a difference in that. So yeah, I'm open to hearing and embracing, learning from people who have other ideas. I mean, I love learning from other people. It's an open canon for me.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed is you love working with different people and seeing different kinds of attitudes and everything. But I do sometimes wonder how, and I think it's both sides that do it, how you're able to deal with the fact that sometimes the folks that are in political forces will sometimes manipulate their religious folks. Because that's what I think happened yesterday when I saw Trump go to Kenosha and those two ministers were there. And it seemed to me that they were being manipulated to some degree to kind of like put their views in everything. And it was that kind of like, we're all peaceful kind of message. But I did feel that they were being manipulated. So I just want to know if you had some thoughts about how sometimes the religion can be manipulated by forces on the right and maybe even sometimes forces on the left.
I think the most critical thing for people in leadership, in faith community leadership roles, is that you have a firm theology, that you really have a firm theology that is personally understood, you understand it personally, and is being consistently communicated to the people. And when you establish that theology, you cannot be manipulated by how a person exegetes your text, right? And I think what's happening now is there are people who are being manipulated through the interpretation of their text that challenges them to embrace someone like a Donald Trump, right? So so for me, it's important that we think about what it means theologically to be neighbors. You know, what it means to be the transforming community of God, right? What that means to love your neighbor who's not a Christian. What it means to tackle some of these political issues that what we have now are these fights that are about political ideology. For me, the theology is more important to me than the politics, because my theology informs my theology informs my politics.
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot of people who are making comments on both sides of the aisles, are not really clear around how they think theologically around some of the matters that we're facing right now.
Yeah.
What are you saying about violence? One of the challenges we're facing for Black people right now is, it's interesting. I mean, I'm thinking about doing some writing on it. Is that a lot of my friends, and probably some of yours, Mark, are really thinking about picking up a gun. I mean, running out and buying guns, and there's been a lot of criticism for faith communities not really telling folks to go get a gun, because the counter revolution is taking place.
Right.
I talked a little bit recently about for every revolution there's a counter revolution. So we have what we're seeing right now is a massive revolution that it involves things like law enforcement, defunding the police or reimagining law enforcement is in fact is a revolution. And the conversation around Me Too is a revolution, right?
Yeah.
LGBTQI inclusion is revolution. Black Lives Matter is revolution. And for every revolution, there's counter-revolution. And the counter-revolution is showing up in ways that marries all of that as one big thing to try to beat up. We've been beat up in all those matters. And so when we see all of that, with these counter revolutions, people are responding with, I'm not so sure that Trump folk ain't gonna come out and try to get us. And we're seeing that. They're taking up their arms, they're coming, and there's a fear that Black folks are going to be attacked. And we've seen a recasting of what the Black Panthers were saying back in 1971, 1972, which is we're going to defend ourselves. Okay. And for me, there's some practicality around that, especially if you're living in rural communities. I spent some time in Western North Carolina, where there are people who live distance from urban core, and their neighbors have Trump flags everywhere, and all carry guns. And at night they were shooting guns. You can hear it. And it doesn't feel really safe. Yeah. But there again, with that, the question is, what theology do you use to justify the carrying of a gun?
Right. Wow. Yeah, because you got a lot of folks that are digging up old terms, and you're actually referring to it. Because I don't know that I would have thought that in 2020 we would see a president dig up this whole John Wayne law and order kind of campaign, which is what is being used right now. And I remember Reagan used that back in the 80s when I was in school, and we've seen it a couple of other times, but I definitely did not expect it in 2020. But that seems to be what the current person at 1600, how they're trying to frame the conversation so that they can sway some of their base and win the election.
It's all they have left, Mark. It's all they have left. Given COVID, is the unrest. The unrest. There has to be a narrative around the unrest. Right? What do you do? Who do you blame for the unrest? It creates a new narrative that when you have the counter revolution is taking place, and we want to go back and make America great again. And what you have is this major whistleblower for white folks to want to go back to the days where Black people stayed in their proper place. It's the same. It's Black Panther Party all over again, Mark. It's every every presidential election, if you go back, is Watts all over again. What happened after Watts? What happened? Within the Obama administration, we seen something very similar. We saw first. We saw what happened after Trayvon. The rioting is a result of, it's just not, that's not, but there's people going crazy because they have no reason. These people who are responding to a lot of pain, and president isn't responding to that, and he doesn't need to, because the only thing he has left that can work is challenging people around safety. We are facing what is a very challenging period. The question is, what are faith communities going to say about that? As an activist, person concerned about social justice, what do you say to people around their compulsion to want to fight back? What do you do?
Yeah, that's the hard question I know you have to deal with and other people have to deal with as well, because you are right. A number of friends of mine have talked about wanting to pick up their own guns and everything, particularly when you see something like the gentleman from Kenosha who will go in with a heavy-duty military weapon and basically walk by the cops before he kills folks. I know some folks were shocked that the victims that he had were white victims and not black victims, and I think that might have changed the narrative also. But definitely we saw a lot of folks that were just amazed that he could even walk by and not be stopped.
Well, Mark, it may be time to critique the assumptions of protest.
Right.
I struggle with the idea of what we lived with in the 1960s, where there was assumption that the black body is to be presented as a living sacrifice, right? That we would send our kids to these schools where they're enduring hostile crowds. Elementary age kids go into schools. I mean, watch the videos, right? Where you have elementary age kids and high school kids, people going to college, and you have hostile crowds who are calling them the N-word, and there's verbal, emotional damage being done, in some cases physical damage done to our children. And that was seen as part of what it means to protest. We putting our kids on the front line of protest, where they're bitten by dogs, right? They're water hoses. And we honor that as a legitimate way to engage in the work. I mean, we saw it in North Carolina, Mark, with Moral Monday, that it means to protest is to present your body as a living sacrifice and go to jail. What does it mean for bodies to be sacrificed for the sake of an idea? There needs to be some conversation about the assumption of that. I think in many ways what's happening is people, they're looking at all that and they're thinking now that, I don't want to do that anymore. That my body is my black life matters.
Right.
That my black mind, saying that my black life matters means that you do not have a right to treat me with indignity. Right. So part of what we're having to do is to think about some of the assumptions we make around the way we protest, and whether or not what we see when it comes to rioting and looting, it may be a valid way to do it. Yeah. As much as we don't like it, we criticize it. What is a more profound way of protesting? Presenting our bodies to be beaten, and presenting our bodies to possibly be killed for the sake of an ideal of inclusion.
Right.
To do all of that just to be able to sit next to a white person in the schoolroom. Wow. We did all of that with the idea of sitting next to a white person in a classroom. Right. What is more meaningful, to do that or to come against capitalism?
Right.
The actual symbols of capitalism. What are the symbols of capitalism? Right. These buildings, these businesses are flourishing in a system that's created to attack black bodies. And again, it's capitalism and white supremacy or Christianity, the typical ideas of Christianity used to like fuel the channel the ideas of white supremacy. So what's better for us? What I mean, what's more valid way of engaging in protests? I think people are really challenged with those kind of assumptions, Mark. And as much as we want to say the law and order mandate of both Trump and Biden, that we're not going to take y'all doing that, what does that mean when we juxtapose that against the fact that people are being killed for their protest?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I know some people, when I talk to them about that, they're always talking about that they don't quite get the protest and that they don't understand the protest and that they want to see solutions. And I'm trying to think to myself that a number of the protesters that I know do present solutions. We may not agree with the solutions, whether that's defunding the police or whether that's some of the other things, but they do have solutions. So I'm trying to figure out where they are when they're telling me that they want to see solutions. When I'm hearing people that are presenting solutions, now they might not be the solutions that they agree with.
Well, I mean, what's protest about, Mark? Is protest about solution, or is it about rage?
Good question. Because
what is it about? When people show up in protest, we're coming together and we have a plan to reform all of this, or they just come in because they're just pissed. And I think it's okay to own the fact that what we're doing essentially is becoming because we're tired of what we're seeing. Right. Mm-hmm. And we want to be seen. We want to be seen. We want to be seen, and we want to be heard, and we want to participate in making an announcement to the nation that this is not normal.
Right.
But I don't think we should be critical of people not having an agenda. Pain has no agenda other than the desire to be heard.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, there needs to be some form of agenda. I mean, Dr. King had an agenda, right? They would march for civil rights legislation, public accommodation. They were marching for integration or whatever it may be. And as we look back 50 years later, right, 40, 50 years later, I think we can be critical of what they assume to be the answer. Right.
And even the agenda, because when you talk about the agenda, I know that I posted on Facebook not that long ago, maybe it was like about a week or two ago, when I was thinking about that Dr. King's speech was in the early 60s. I was the child of that age. And if I did the math, by the time that my nephews, who are now 12 and 13, become of my age, that would have been almost 100 years, if not 100 years. And there's a strong possibility that they may still be dealing with the same issues in terms of race relations and in terms of some of the other things that he was talking about in the early 60s. And that to me is a scary thought. But we've come to the past the halfway point and we're still dealing with the same issues. So whether it's environmentalism, which I know he was very much about, whether it's things to deal with the war, which he was also not a big fan of the military in terms of like us being engaged in other countries, and imperialism, whether it was race relations, which we know is a big topic now. I mean, I could go on. The climate, he even talked about the climate. I mean, I mentioned environmentalism, and that's definitely there. But gender issues, a lot of these were issues that he was talking about in the early 60s. We're now in 2020, and these issues are still out there.
Yeah. I'm critical of movements that beg people to do something. I'm critical of movements that, they have these agendas that force people to respond to our dysfunctional way, or I'm critical of that.
Right.
In examining that, with liberation theology, I think that in many ways we have to own that Malcolm was probably more wrong. We're more right than wrong when it came to the way we approach some of this. I mean, maybe part of what we need to look at is our own identity issues. What does it mean to pray beyond people telling us, "Okay, we hear you." I'm no longer convinced, Mark, that the goal should be to beg somebody to do something for me.
Gotcha. And what do you think about this whole push for people, even along those same lines, with racial identity? Because I know right now we're hearing everybody talking about that they want to have this moment of us all understanding racism. Racism has existed since the country was founded, pretty much. So it's not like a new invention. It's been here for 400 years, but folks are now coming to the realization that it does exist, and they're talking about systematic racism, which has also been existing since the beginning. But from your standpoint, Carl, is this something that we need to be having a conversation about, or is it something that we need to be having a conversation about in a different context, or not at all?
So what is the conversation we're talking about here? When you're talking about racism?
I mean, it seems to be that's what they seem to be talking about right now, is whether we're talking about the whole Black Lives Matter movement or the different other movements. It seems to be that the push is for systematic racism and for the quote unquote allies, whether that's white, Asian, Middle Eastern, Native American, whatever, Latin American, to kind of like understand where we're coming from and to help us in the struggle. That is the way that I'm hearing it presented. But I don't know if that's the way you're hearing it or what your thoughts are.
I think what people are calling for is to stop killing Black people, stop killing indigenous people. People don't realize that actually indigenous people are killed more by police than we are, Black people. Right. People not considering that there too. I think what we were talking about here is just stop killing us.
Right.
Very simple request, right? It's very simple request. And looking at why and how that shows up, I think that's what people are asking for. But we're having now is we have the tools to dig deeper into why that exists,
right?
Where all that comes from. One of the things that's concerning me in Black spaces is this movement toward a nationalistic approach to race. We wanted to discount the Blackness of certain kind of people. Question Kamala's Blackness is being questioned.
Right.
The ADOS, African Descendants of Slavery, who wanted to minimize they're wanting to do something that's really important, which is to name, in the case of reparation, who's worthy of reparations. But I don't like conversations that move toward negating the Blackness of people who are not who aren't descendants of American slaves. That you're coming to America from the Caribbean, you're coming to America from Africa or other places. You're still Black in the eyes of people who see you. When you walk up and play a place, they see a Black person. When Kamala shows up, they see a Black woman. And she's going to be treated as a Black woman. And so I'm going to be very careful not to minimize. Other things happening right now, I think some of the questions we're not approaching is how interracial relationships impact these conversations. We're having different types of discussions about race. But you're right that some of it is old stuff. And I want to reshape the way we have these conversations. I do concern myself about these systems, but I'm also concerned about how we talk to each other.
Yeah, that seems to be something that's very interesting. Yeah, because that seems to be something very interesting where you do see folks that are trying to redefine Kamala because she is of Indian descent and Jamaican descent. But it's like at the end of the day, when they walk out the door, what they see is somebody that is of a brown or a dark complexion. They don't necessarily see this ethnic mix that she is. And I would argue the same thing for former President Obama. They didn't necessarily see his mixture and everything. And I would even argue that for some of our Indian American brothers who can definitely be very dark complected, that when they walk out, they don't see them as anything but that N-word. They're not necessarily seeing them as another ethnicity or Asian or anything of that nature. They're just seeing them as another dark face.
Right. So what makes that? What do you think makes a person? What qualifies racial identity?
What qualifies what?
What is it that qualifies your ethnicity or your race? What is it that qualifies that. It's two things for me. It's first, the most important is how you identify.
Right.
We got to be, we had a white woman who claimed to be black, and that's a whole different conversation with Delossi. But race identity is also how people see you. It's how you identify. It's how you self-identify, but it's also how people see you.
And not just, and also how you see yourself, because you mentioned somebody, one of the candidates who did not get into office, and I don't know all the story of it, but didn't she identify herself? And then she was even painted into a corner because she identified at least part of her ethnicity as being indigenous or Native American, because I remember her being one of the candidates, and that's how she got painted into a corner.
Right. Well, it's identity, again, it's a combination of how you self-identify, but it's also connected to how people see you. I'm Irish. Part of my racial identity is Irish. Part of my racial identity is Native American. Do you see that? What is it?
Not everybody sees that. Everybody does not see that at all. Sometimes they don't see that at all.
Square and name myself as an Irish American. I'm an Irish American. How does that look?
Yeah, because most people identify by what you look like. So they identify by the skin tone that they see. They don't necessarily identify by anything that they see other than that, and also how you self-identify. Like I've got family members in my family, definitely me, my dad, and my younger brother identify within the African American community, but I've got family members that only identify on the Native American side. And we acknowledge that as part of our heritage, but I've got some family members that if you told them that they were black, they would probably be ready to get into a fist fight with you.
Right. It's really tricky when it comes to black identity because, truth be told, there are black people who claim Native American ancestry. The truth is white. So it's easier to say that, right? It's easier to say white, and for me, it's both. I'm appalled by the fact that I got Irish blood in my veins. You look at my family, you see it. Many black folk don't have it as part of our story. It's something we have to deal with when it comes to the question of identity. It's complicated when we talk about black identity. For me, it's troubling when we use those kind of tools against each other. What does it mean that we use that to minimize the integrity of a person's witness? But
we've been doing that for a while, because I was just recently reading about, I was talking to an activist out of California, and they just recently discovered Pauli Murray. Now, all of us here, or not all, but quite a few of us here in North Carolina knew who Pauli Murray is, but they just recently discovered her. And I know that even part of her conversation, even when she was here, was dealing with her orientation identity, because she was trying to, I don't know that she ever came out, because from what I understand, I don't know that she ever truly came out till after she passed.
Well, I have problems. I have problems with how locally she's outed.
Right.
She's outed as lesbian by a certain organization in Durham, and she didn't do that. She did not come out. So we shouldn't bring her out.
Right.
There again is a question of how you identify. The power of the way you identify is critical to this conversation. If I identify, the way I want to identify is also connected to the way I perceive. Pauli Murray, if she had self-identified as a lesbian, I don't know what that would have meant for her career. I think the people who knew her, they accepted that. It was hard not to see it.
Good.
Right. I'm not stereotyping when I say that, but I think that her life was such that it was pretty well, it's pretty obvious that she's not a straight person. Out of respect, I think people gave her the right to choose how she named that. As an Episcopal priest, it wasn't an issue. As an attorney, it wasn't an issue. But she lived with that in her own ways, and I think she should be empowered to choose that on her own. There are people who go back and they look at her papers, and they will own her identity as their own. She's used. She's used as a black woman to advocate on behalf of other black women who identify as lesbian. I don't know how to deal with that. You know, I am not lesbian. I'm not gay. I'm straight. I'm cis. Okay. So I don't know how that would feel, or how I would be important to have that part of my identity. But these questions are important, right?
Right.
It's important for Kamala to be able to identify. People want to be critical of Kamala for choosing a white husband.
Right.
But she chose Howard. She chose AKA.
Yeah.
Right. So she's owning part of legacy and history that is purely Black. I mean, I watch her eat hot sauce. I mean, fried chicken, hot sauce. I mean, culturally, she's a Black woman.
Right.
I've never heard where she goes to church.
Yeah.
I mean, have you?
No, I haven't heard anything about her church attendance. So maybe she's going to a Black church. Maybe she's going to another denomination. I have no idea. It
mattered to me that Obama went to Trinity.
Right.
That his pastor is my spiritual mentor. It mattered to me. That's all I need to know. You go to Trinity, I got all I need to know.
So you already knew just by knowing the connection to your mentor, Jeremiah Wright, and everything, and knowing that where he was at.
How you not be Black and go to Trinity?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's true.
How do you do that?
Yeah. You pretty much got to go there. And I imagine that where they're at in Los Angeles, I know that there's Abyssinian in New York, and I know there are a number of other churches. So I imagine that where Kamala is in California, there's got to be a Trinity-like church, and hopefully that's where she's going to church at.
I know she had connection to my mentor in Oakland, J. Alfred Smith. You know, he wrote the foreword for my recent book. He speaks very highly of Kamala. I don't know how you can be Black and how you can be in Oakland and not have some Black in you.
Right.
I mean, I just don't know how that can happen. You know.
Well, I'm thinking that no matter the fact that she might have married her husband and her husband is of the ethnicity that he is, but yeah, I don't know how you can grow up in Oakland and not at least have some Black Panther viewpoints. Like I said, because I'm thinking Kamala at least got to have some Black Panther viewpoints. Maybe not all, but you did do some things within the prison system that we don't agree with. But I'm thinking at least some of the viewpoints had to be Black Panther based if you were living in Oakland for any period of time.
I don't see how you can do that. I don't see how. I mean, you're choosing. People want to question her Blackness. I don't see how you do that.
Right. But I mean, part of the reason I think that they're trying to question her Blackness, the other thing is they're always talking about her views with what she did in the as district attorney and in the legal profession. But what I know about those professions is that if you're appointed, you still have to follow the dictates of what the job is. So sometimes I don't think that all of those decisions were strictly hers because she still has to follow the rules.
I think what we're having the challenge is the systemic issues. We can talk about systemic racism in the criminal justice system, and she's a part of that. And she's supposed to be Superwoman, swamp in and alter the entire system as a Black woman. I don't think that's fair to expect that, given when it all happened. I'm critical of the policy. I think we can be. But also in being critical of the policy, we also have to look at the system that she's part of that is enforcing the policy. Those are different kind of questions, and looking at the total thing. I mean, it's the same thing with Obama for me.
I was say Obama would be another case.
I'm critical of Obama. I'm not critical of his Blackness.
Right.
I'm affirming Obama as a Black man. Right. I'm down with the brother. He's my brother, but I can be critical of some of the policy.
Right.
But I'm not gonna question whether or not he's down with the Black cause. As what people say now, that all skin folk ain't kin folk and he ain't skin folk. People say that kind of stuff. I don't question his Blackness.
Right.
There's some people that it's hard. Some of these Black Republicans. But, it's how you identify.
Yeah, definitely. But I have to ask you this, Carl, but didn't you at least for a minute question Herschel and Tim Scott when they were on the RNC? Because, like I said, they're definitely black folks, and I definitely admire their sports things. But some of the things he was saying, like, he can't be a racist because I'm his friend, and therefore he's my friend, so therefore he can't be a racist, which is kind of the argument that he was given.
I don't question his blackness. I question his intelligence.
Okay.
I think for Herschel, it's understood. The Trump made him a multimillionaire when he signed with XFL. I mean, Trump was an owner of the football team that Herschel played for. I understand how money plays a part. For some of the others, I think there's something to be said of what happens when you're black and Republican. I'll just say this. That as a black pastor in Durham, North Carolina, there have been a couple of times when I have been approached by the Republican Party to line myself up politically to office. Okay. I remember the last time it happened, I got a call from a U.S. congressman who's not a North Carolina congressman, but a congressman said, "We've been watching you and wonder if you would consider taking on the issue of family values for the Republican Party." And I remember it well, Mark, because I were at Blue Coffee downtown when I got the call. And I remember saying a few curse words and looking at my phone more than once and asking him the question, "Are you sure you called the right person?" Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, what is it about what I have written or said that would cause you to believe that I would make that kind of decision? And they made it clear they came with some benefits financially, right? And I remember I'm mindful of that because this happened prior to my living in North Carolina to go back to Missouri, and it was a time where brother could have used the payday.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? I could have used the payday. I could use it now too. I mean, all of us can. But it just came to me that following that phone call, I noticed a number of pastors across North Carolina. Mark, it took place during Amendment 1.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Amendment 1.
So you had Amendment. It was post Amendment 1, and we were going into the conversation about the bathrooms. Mm-hmm. The whole bathroom. I think it was in between. Or maybe it was just Amendment 1. I can't remember specific. Anyway, so there was those kind of issues on the table in North Carolina. But I noticed there were a number of ministers who shortly after that stood at the state capitol. They did two things. There was a press conference where they stood together and fighting against homosexuality. Mm-hmm. Right? And the second thing they did was they went from legislator to legislator's office, lobbying in support against gay rights in North Carolina. So that all happened at the same time. This is like 2012. So I'm mindful of that whenever I see Black folk who take a position in support of the Republican Party. Or take on positions that are kind of in opposition to traditional Black ideas. In those cases, I'm thinking that there's somebody getting some money.
Somebody got a little bit of cash. So you think? I know that you're not afraid to fight issues because I remember a certain minister in Raleigh that tried to paint you a certain way when you went into his office because he didn't approve of the fact that you are not the traditional image of what his perception of what a minister should be. So you walked into this particular church. I was not there, but friends of mine told me about it. And apparently he tried to go into and try to start change his sermon and everything in the middle because I guess you had one of your earrings are on or something like that. But it was a popular prosperity church in Raleigh. But I remember. Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's more than it's happened. That's happened to me more than once, Mark. It happened to me in Durham with Bloomer. Yeah, I'll say names. I don't care. So I mean, it's happened with, it's happened with others who, want to paint a picture based on their theology. I don't have a problem with their theology. The politics come in. I do question, though, that I do believe some of these folk are getting paid. And that's my position. I stand by it based on what I've experienced on my own.
Yeah. No, and like I said, you have a strong spirit, and I'm not a big fan personally of prosperity ministries because they seem to have a certain people make their money and they do well off of their money, whereas the congregation not as much. At least that's what I've observed. I think that some of the messaging it might be very good, but in terms of what they're getting from the Bible, but also in my mind, sometimes it's a corrupt message. But that's just what I think and everything. But another thing that I've noticed that you're not afraid to talk about is the fact that even in our own community, we've got folks that sometimes will pit against each other, and you're not going to be like you are very steadfast in the fact that when those things happen, if the people are wrong, you will tell them that they are wrong. Because I'm thinking about like even what went on with a certain white council member and a certain black staff member, but you are not going to sugarcoat what was going on, and I don't think you're even still now sugarcoating it. And we've also seen it happen even within either the PACs or within different factions within the city council. So when you see injustice, you let those injustices be told about, and you're not afraid to tackle those injustices.
Well, Mark, you're a journalist, right? Come on.
Yes.
So, I wrote a piece today. I don't know if you saw it yet, but I wrote a piece today about what it means to be a Black journalist in this new age, right? And what reason, you could talk to me about why you decided to major in journalism. For me, it was the idea of making a difference in the world. It was like a way of contributing as a journalist to the casting of the way we think about Blackness. When I entered into the field, I started working TV. I was 19 years old. I've done radio, TV, newspaper, magazine, PR. I've done the whole gamut. I've taught journalism. I've been doing this thing for a long time, and I've seen the changes. You have too. We've seen the changes. But the one thing that for me, when it comes to these issues, that as a journalist, my responsibility, and I continue to work in journalism with my blog, and I'm doing some new things. It's my responsibility to give the other side of the story when those perspectives aren't being added. I read articles in our local newspaper, and it's obvious that they're missing an angle to the story. Mm-hmm. And they're missing the angle for one or two reasons. They're either missing it because they're just too blind and can't see it because of cultural differences, or they're missing it because they just don't give a damn, right? But there are these perspectives that are often being missed. In teaching journalism, I always taught my students that you always get the story within the story. There's within the story. And so when I think about journalism, Mark, I think about it in the same way I think about exegeting the biblical text.
Okay.
The way I engage as a minister in communicating Bible stuff is the way I look at what it means to be a journalist who's called to give a different kind of news, the bad news.
Right.
For me, what I do in my activism work, what I do in my journalism work, what I do in my ministerial role are all the same thing.
Right.
It's confronting the silence around a couple of things. And so you mentioned the Heidi Carter and the Wendell Davis case, where I'm watching the white silence on this issue. And for those who don't know, you go to my blog, Rev E. Lucian, and just read it or Google me and it'll come up. And I'm just really just fascinated where the silence coming from community around what it means to have a county manager who accuses a county commissioner of communication that feels like racism or bias. And for the county commissioner to respond with an investigation on whether or not he did that to influence an election, right? While being forced by the community to have an investigation on her actions, and reports to come out that he did nothing wrong, and for that same, and then a report to come out that her actions can easily be perceived as being racist, and that there is a dysfunctional nature within the board. And for that to be reported in ways like, okay, this is what it said. Can we move on? Mm-hmm. And then for Heidi Carter to come back with a conversation about, I'm so glad that I've been vindicated, that, you know, they said I didn't do anything racist. And, oh, by the way, this is what they do to women. They treat women when we stand up and we're strong. Sexism pushes us in a corner because we have to work a certain way. So she used that old trope that it's not racist, but it's sexist. And community is like silent around that, Mark. Wow. Like, you know, we're not wanting to press the story and challenge some kind of accountability among our elected officials. So as a Black person, you know, and as a journalist, as a minister, I'm looking at multiple layers of injustice in the way this story plays out in public space.
But so this is not the first time that's happened, because as you were saying that, I was thinking even nationally about how sometimes even in the BLM movement and some people will switch that to a conversation around gender equity, and I'm not knocking the need for gender equity and pay equity among the pay gap that exists between men and women, or even what happened with the early version of civil rights and the early creation, because I mentioned Pauli Murray earlier, and she created both. She was one of the creators of both Core and Now. So there was kind of that conversation that those things were going on at the same time. So I do wonder if this conversation where you're trying to have certain forces that are trying to have to use the Black struggle for their struggle as well, or to bring their struggle to the forefront as well. And then sometimes that pushes the Black struggle to the side. And I think that's been going on for decades.
Right. Decades. You know, Paula Giddings has a good book called From When and Where We Enter, that chronicles the experiences of Black women as both the sexism by white men and Black men, and also the racism coming from white women in these movements, be it women's suffrage or civil rights. How Black women have always having to bow to the agenda of white women. You know, and this is like an example of what happened locally of a county commissioner like begging Black women to come to her defense because a Black man must be wrong, right? And an attempt to create a wedge between Black folks in our community, and that's what happened. Is that there were people taking sides. So as a journalist, my responsibility in those cases, it was first as you know, and sometimes these roles are muddled, right? It's difficult. But I've just come to a conclusion, Mark, that my role now is to balance the news, you know, and you know, in the old ideal of what it meant to be a journalist is that we tell the story the right way, right? Balance the stories, we tell it the right way. You know, you do the sourcing, you know, you get the three people, you know, you do the background check, the fact check, do all that. So make sure that you have a well-constructed story that is fact-based. But what I've come to conclude, Mark, is that my responsibility is just to make sure that Black voices are heard in the news. Right. Because it's not there. You know, it's not there in ways. And so that I'm not as concerned about being the real balance to the story. My balance is to the already existing narrative out there in public space. So it's a little different for me in the way I think about the role of a journalist, and also that centers also the way I think about my role as an activist, and the way I think about as my role as a spiritual leader. It all fits in a way that is no longer like muddled by what can be conflicting agendas, you know. When I started writing columns in 1997, it was hard for me because of the way I saw my role was a little bit different back then, right? Because I was bringing the traditional way of thinking about my role, and although I began in 1997 in Durham as a column writer, I was still thinking about the balance of the story.
Right.
It's like, how do I tell the story in a way that help people see the different sides? And it was interesting that when I started writing the columns, the moniker that the newspaper used was Kenney, Voice of Many, because I was like, I was coming against the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. I was a Black guy who was like, get in there and tell the real story the way it needs to be told, while not seeing that in many ways I was being used as a pawn to just endorse the white idea of how the story is being told. So,
because
so
that's one of the things that even goes on here. And I know it's not just here; it's around the country, because we'll have these different PACs, and one of them might be white run or minority run, and then the other one might be more minority run. I know that's existing here in Durham, but I've got friends in California and New York that tell me that what we have here in Durham, in that sense, is not all that unusual, because there are oftentimes this going on around the nation. And I would even argue around the world. And part of what you do is that you try to shine light on both of their sides. And you found fault. I'll just use the example of Durham. You found fault in both some of the things that the People Alliance has done, but you've also found fault in some of the things that the Durham Affairs has done as well. So, like I said, you're definitely trying to cover both sides, and you acknowledge the faults of both.
Well, yeah, and I'm telling that from the culture of Black people.
Yeah.
So, it's my reporting around the criticism of Black communities is being told from the perspective of the people who are being critical of Black communities. So it's not like a white perspective against that. I'm not co-signing on what white reporters are doing, which is also very, very damaging. I was doing it as a person who is working within the culture. Mm-hmm. Reporting that comes within the culture is a little bit different, and so you go through my column, right? My columns, I got over 1,000 pieces I've written. I've got close to 600 blogs and close to 1 million hits. Yeah. I looked at my blog today when I posted. It was like 400. It was 560 or something like that. And I took a vacation for a long time, and then you go back to my columns, the Herald Sun, the News and Observer, the Durham News, Spectacular, Magazine, blah blah blah, Washington Post, Religious News Services, Columbia Missourian, Religious News Services, Sojourner Magazine, all of those.
Oh yeah.
It's all over the place, right?
You're all over the place. That's a good thing. We might get, like I said before, on IPM TV and get you even more all over the place. But that being said, what is in either your activism or your journalism? What is the story or the thing about your activism that shocked you the most? Something that you still reflect on to this day that you were surprised by, whether it was something that happened at Ferguson, whether it's something that's gone on here in Durham. But what is something that just kind of like caught you off guard and you still reflected on it to this day as something that you weren't expecting?
Mark, I wasn't expecting, and maybe this is my naivete. I wasn't expecting the criticism around my gay rights activism. Yeah, I really, because of the way I entered into the conversations with my columns, was just to ask a critical question. This is what year was that? 1998. Let me just set it up for you. What happened was I was on the board for the United Way, the Durham United Way board of directors, and there was a conversation about two things. It was the Boy Scouts and the YMCA that was receiving United Way monies. Right. Where they also had policy of discriminations against LGBTQ, right? And John Burness, was it John? John from Duke, who came forward and said, we ain't gonna give y'all no money if y'all take that position. So very bold statements coming from Nan Cohen and Duke. And I'm on the board, and so I make a decision to resign from the board so that I could write about it. because it was something I couldn't write about as a board member. So I resigned my position in the board, and I wrote a piece that simply asked the question, what would it mean for faith communities to have a conversation with gays, the gay people in the congregation, about how they feel when we spew homophobic conversation? Okay, that's the conversation. And I was like thinking that that's going to generate a lot of public conversation. It was going to be beneficial in helping us think about faith communities. Right? And it became this highly controversial statement that led to outrage among the congregation. And I'm really surprised by that. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think my surprise really opened my eyes to the brutal way theology is used to limit voices.
Wow.
So, you know, in retrospect, and, you know, that's going back 20 years close, you know, it's going back a while, right? Mm-hmm. It's going back more than 20 years where that happened. And I'm really kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
That I would think that people would be more open to conversation. So for me, I think that's it. That's the thing that surprised me.
That's the one that surprised me the most. That was in terms of was that on the writing side or the activism side, or both in terms of that part? Or was there anything in terms of your writing or theology messages that surprised you as well? So like I said, or was that on all three of those parts of Carl Kenney?
That particular position, I think it represented the transforming Carl Kenney.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that was a moment of rapid transition for my work in ministry. Mm-hmm. I was a new column writer. I was a trained journalist who made the decision that I was going to focus on ministry versus journalism. So I was working as a journalist. I was doing the community work and building ministry for Northeast Central Durham. I was doing a lot of work with the Northeast Central Durham Partners Against Crime Project. So I was deeply engaged in community work. My columns were creating activist work with pen. And my activism has been a variety of ways that my activism shows up. I think the most fluid way is through my writing. But I would say that was a moment of radical transformation in the way I view myself as journalist, minister, activist, novelist, all of that. It became more of one voice, what I discovered, Marc, is that people didn't want to see it that way. Mm. People want to see it as, and compartmentalize my identity. We do that. We want to dichotomize. Over here, you're they want to make me a bivocational type of person. Mm. That's who you are over there. This is who you are over here. And you need to separate those. So in making columns, what I think the church wanted me to be was a person who was doing like sermon notes. Okay. Can you use that to like press like this is what God is saying? Especially since it was a Sunday column, right? But I think for me, what happened in that, I'm saying, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. They're not different personalities. It's all the same person. Right. So taking on that position, Marc, was it was the position I took that was the unsafe position to take, that challenged me to think different about the power of my words. Mm-hmm. And that the words can't always be safe. That you got to think about these issues beyond the institutional interpretation of what it all looks like. And since then, that's what I've tried to do is to take the unsafe route, take the road less traveled. As Peck talks about that.
Yeah, you definitely do that. Just really quickly, we wind down your segment and everything, but what do you think is the future for Durham, since we're in Durham, both of you and me and everything, but also this is a global platform, IBM.TV and everything. So if you were to put your future glasses on, what do you see as the future of Durham politically and social justice wise, but also what do you see as the future of the nation and even the globe? So I know that you are definitely a deep thinker and think about these things on a deep and intellectual level. So I just wondering what your thoughts are as to our future. And we got an election coming up in less than 70 days. So where do you think we're heading?
I've always said when I started writing columns for Durham, I was asked to come on board because there was John Hope Franklin was chosen by Bill Clinton to be the race jar for the nation. You know, we were having these conversations about race. I mean, that goes back a while, right? People forget that. And I was brought into the Herald Sun because the managing editor at that time, Hawkins, said, we want Durham to be the incubator. You know, we want it to be the place where we model what it means to be a community that talks about these issues. I still believe that's true. That what Durham represents for the nation is a place where we can have conversations that are difficult conversations, and we can model what it means to be different, more so than any other city in the country, because we have no racial majority. Right. We're divided, Latin, Black, white. We are diverse. We are diverse racially and ethnically. We are diverse when it comes to religion. We have a high concentration of people who are non-religious or spiritualist. We have a very large LGBTQ population. We are a highly intelligent community. We're one of the most educated cities in the country. We have a disparate economic community. We are faced with gentrification. We have a Black leadership among our law enforcement. Our law enforcement is all Black. Our sheriff, our chief of police, our DA, all Black. They all are supportive of rethinking law enforcement. We have all of that in one place. We have majority in most of those places, and we're having conversations about reparations, what it means for faith communities to engage in reparations. So what I would say as we wind this thing down, that Durham is in a real good place, again, in a good place to reimagine these issues, or reimagine what it means to be community as we tackle these kind of tough questions. I see my role in the process to keep us centered around making certain that no one is left out of that conversation, right? That we not get comfortable with our assumptions, but past our assumptions to see the more perfect way. So that's where I see Durham headed, and I'm grateful to be back in the city.
And what do you see on a global level? Like I said, we've got an election coming up. I know some of that will be the local level politics, but we've also got the national. So what is your thoughts as to how we're going to head in less than 70 days when we have the election?
Durham? Oh, Durham is going to be heavily Biden country. I would say that 85% of Durham is going to vote Democrat. I don't think it's any different. I mean, they're going to vote Biden. I think that if governor is going to be, well, you know, the governor won in North Carolina, the Democratic governor won because of Durham. You know, that's going to happen again. So we fight in Durham. Local politics, we're fighting for control. You know, hostile. But the truth be told, we're essentially on the same page. You know, essentially on the same page. This is battles around who leads. But when it comes to the national political scene, the state political scene, I think what Durham is going to do for the state of North Carolina is going to lead the way around fostering in a more progressive ideal of what it means to be community. I think we're going to lead the way when it comes to criminal justice reform. I think you'll see some amazing things happening when it comes to that. We have probably one of the best police chiefs in the United States. I mean, she's the head of the The chief of police is, I forget what they call the association, but she is a sharp woman, Black woman. I mean, we are going to lead the state when it comes to this election. No question about it.
What about the national election? Do you think that we'll actually get rid of that person in 1600, or are you not as hopeful of that happening? Because I'm hearing different leaders that are afraid that we may actually lose that election again.
I'm gonna tell you, Mark. This is where I'm standing. I think if all things were fair, if all things are fair, this would not be a conversation. I am not convinced that we're working with an equal playing field. I believe that the corruption is so extreme that we have to consider the possibility of losing, because he got the Russians on his side. He got the U.S. postal system on his side. And I think the devil is in it. Incarnate evil is in this work, and I'm not trusting there will be a fair election. That's where I'm coming down with it. I believe the only way we can counter that is that you need to bring your mama, your daddy, your grandmama, your granddaddy, and your children out to vote. And I'm not trusting the mail-in.
Right.
Get your behind to stand in line, do the social distancing, get your 4 or 5 masks on, some plastic bags around your feet and your head, and stand there with a sack lunch and dinner and vote on election day. That's the only way I think we're going to win it, is this overwhelming joy.
Gotcha.
I don't trust it.
Yeah, I don't trust them either. And I do agree that there's all kinds of corruption going on. And we've definitely got to, like you said, get everybody out to vote, everybody that you can out to vote. So I definitely agree with you on that. One of the things that I know on this platform, we've got some board of directors that are from South Africa and Malaysia and India and other places. And it's just amazing. I don't know how many big folks you've had the pleasure of meeting worldwide, but the world leadership and the world common citizen is just amazed that we've elected this fool and are afraid that we're about to elect him again. That's the impression that I'm getting from folks around the world that I've had the pleasure of talking to. They are very much concerned about how it happened, and they are afraid of a repeat. So we've definitely got to do our job and things along that line. So just out of curiosity, because I know a number of our folks that are watching and are around the world checking us out and everything are from other parts of the country. So just changing the focus a little bit, what places in the world have you visited, Carl, and what's on your dream list? Because we're going to have to see if we can get some of our producers to get you over there.
I've been all over parts of Africa. I've been to Russia. I've been to most of Europe. Central America. I've been all over the place, as both minister, journalist, and just tourist. So there have been many places I visited. On my list, I haven't been to Japan. I haven't been to China. That's on my bucket list.
Okay.
Is China. And I haven't been to Thailand. That's on my bucket list. Because I just want to. I want to get engrossed in the spirituality of Asia. I see what that feels like to go to like a Buddhist monk. I want to embrace that. That's about it. I've been to England on a number of occasions. I've not yet been to Ireland. I want to go to Ireland because I'm Irish. So that's on my list. I'm thinking about if the occupant of the White House wins, I'm imagining what it would mean to live in South America.
So you're saying if the current occupant wins, you might move?
Yeah. I think the only thing that's persuading me to think otherwise is they don't want us.
Right.
I mean, Canada said, "Yeah, keep your ass out." In America, we don't want you. They don't want us. But aren't you thinking about it, Mark?
Oh, I'm giving it some serious consideration. I've already got some South American countries in mind. I've got some other countries in mind, and you are right. They are not exactly welcoming us, even with what's going
No.
on with COVID and everything. I know that I had the pleasure of having somebody from one of those exotic islands in the like the Pacific Rim of Asia, and they were even
Mhm.
saying Baja, I think it was, or something like that. But I had them on this platform, and they were showing their condo that they were living in. I was like, that's a place I could live at. So, like I
Yeah.
said, I don't know that they're trying to
I
rush
want
us to get over there
I
or
want to
any
go to
parts
Costa
of the
Rica.
world.
I want to go to Costa Rica.
Yep, Costa Rica would be on the list.
Costa
Costa
Rica.
Rica, I know that we have
Costa
a
Rica.
mutual friend that is taught at Belize, so I've thought about Belize. I've thought about
Yeah. Yeah.
Brazil. There are a number of great countries that I've thought about if that current occupant stays in office. That I might have to grab my brother, my parents, and my nephews, and we might have to pack up and grab some friends like you and others and figure out.
Brother, what I say, Mark, I said what I say we do, Mark, is we go as a team, right? This is the
Right.
plan. This is the plan, Mark. We both got to get married, and we're gonna take our wives to Costa Rica,
Okay.
and we can do like a share thing.
The whole share thing.
We can share a place. It got to be big though, because I don't want to hear you screaming. But we got to figure this thing out.
No, I agree. We got to figure out a solution. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit of winding down in the whole show, but I do want to let you go. But if there's
Yes,
any
sir.
positive messages that you want to just
Thank you,
share
brother.
with our worldwide audience and everything, what are those positive messages that you would like to share
I,
to the worldwide
I'm,
audience, just not to
I
the
want to
folks here, but I'm sure you got a positive thought that you like to share.
I just want to encourage people in this highly dysfunctional season to be faithful, to remember that we've been here before, and that we've always come through the other side of this storm with our heads held high and the sound of victory in our voice. This will change, and if it doesn't, meet you in Costa Rica. 22.
Sounds like a plan, man. Like I said, we might have a whole gang of folks going over there
All
to
of
Costa
it.
Rica if things don't change. But that's definitely something I can agree with you that we've been through this. We've seen the rednecks and the other racists and other types of reactionaries. This is not anything new. We remember both you and me, folks like George Wallace, folks like a number of others that have been that have passed on and in another plane somewhere in their ancestral land and everything. But we definitely know that this reactionary kind of government is not
Yeah.
new to 2020. It's happened in the 60s. It's happened in the 80s. It's happened several decades in the past. So we just have to continue doing what I know I try to do on a regular basis and what I know Reverend Carl does, or what Carl does, which is just kind of like being a fighter in the struggle. So that's one of the things I've always
Yeah.
respected about you, Carl, is that you are definitely a true fighter, and that I know that you're not going to go down without a fight.
No, we're fighting. Peace, my brother.
Peace.
See
Great
you around,
having
man.
Reverend
See you
Kenney on
around.
the show, or Carl as he wants to be called now. So definitely it's great having him and join us on the conversation, and definitely look forward to having him back in the not too distant future talking to us on other important issues, because I do know that Carl has always got things going on about social justice and things along that line. So definitely looking forward to having more conversations with Carl Kenney. And I'm about to break one of the cardinal rules of journalism. So I'm glad that Carl is still with me. Carl, before you leave,
Yes,
I need you to tell folks where they can reach you on the blog, and you can tell them where they can find the books and all of that, because we do want them to know how to reach you.
I'll make it easy. The blog is REV hyphen elution, ELUTION. It's a change in the one substance from another from within. .blogspot.com. I have three books out. There's Preacher Man, Backslide, that are the semi autobiographical, based on my story. Read those, and then my new book that is out, available now, is My Daddy's Promise: Lessons Learned in Caregiving. It tells the story of my dad. The best way to find all of that stuff is just Google me, and stuff will pop up all over the place. It's Carl, CarlKenney, and you can get it. My book's on Amazon. You can get it anywhere other than your local bookstore, because COVID done messed every damn thing up. But there you go. That's how you can get me.
Sounds great, and I'm sure folks will learn some very powerful lessons that you learned from your dad, just like I'm sure you share in that book some of the things that you did early on the show that you learned as as an activist from your mom. So I know you learned from a number of folks. So I'm sure that as they go and get those books, they will learn some very valuable lessons and things that can benefit their lives also.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
No problem. Great having Carl Kenney on. And like I said, that's the way that you can reach Carl Kenney. And we're going to continue having just a little bit of our conversation. And I will put out there ways that you can get his book and all of that, as well as still providing some of the clues for the mystery guests that'll be showing up in about another 30 minutes. So we will have some mystery guests and things along that line. So I'm going to put up some more clues, including some of these sports clues that exist. Because like I said, one of the mystery guests is a sports figure. And here's one of the clues. They played in a game and everything. So they played in the Canadian Football League. That's right. They were involved in the Canadian Football League. They were also inducted into the USA Track and Field Hall of Fame back in 2003. And they helped to organize the Summer Olympics, those in 1984, they were held in Los Angeles. And they won a gold medal. That's right. They won a gold medal in the 1967 Pan American Games. So that's just some of the clues that you may know about our mystery guest number 2, and definitely hoping to hear more of what they've got to say. Oh, and there's also a statue of them on the campus of San Jose State. So there is a statue of them in San Jose State. And, you know, we like folks to speak at rallies. And in 2011, they spoke at Occupy. So that's right. They spoke at the Occupy Wall Street. So I think that I misspelled that. And, you know, things happen when you're typing too fast. But they did speak at Occupy. So I'm going to ready to bring that clue up as well. And y'all will just have to ignore my bad spelling. And in 2001, he spoke at Occupy Wall Street. So that's one of the clues as well. And this is a quote that they gave also. So they gave this quote: "Today I'm here for you. Why? Because I am you. We're here 43 years later because there's still a fight still to be won. This day is not for us, but for our children to come." So that's a quote that they gave you about themselves. I'm also going to share a video with a good friend of mine who put out a video, and it's a video that I think y'all will find of interest. It's not a clue, but it was done by Sean Dina, and I was hoping to have Sean Dina on, but he might be joining us on an upcoming edition of this show as well. So we're going to let you check out a little bit of Sean Dina's music. Like I said, I do know he popped in briefly during our chat, and he might be popping back next week, either next Monday or next Wednesday. But he did provide this great content, and I definitely want to share that with you fine folks. So definitely keep that in mind as we bring up his stuff also. So I think that y'all will find this very enjoyable, and hopefully y'all will find a way to enjoy it and to continue to enjoy it, because it was just amazing conversation that and a musical thing that he was sharing with us that I know a number of you may be interested in. So that's one of the things that I'm going to pull up is the video from none other than Sean Dina, who is a musician had a little bit of a glitch there, but we're going to keep this thing rolling right along. And I do want to thank Xanet Williams Oakley for saying that they were enjoying that good information that they were getting earlier from none other than Dr. Fola May. So definitely want to thank Williams Oakley for popping in and giving us that very positive comment about what they were enjoying about the conversation and things of that nature. And I'm still waiting to find out if anybody can figure out the mystery guest. The mystery guest will be coming your way very shortly, and we have got some folks that might be trying to guess and figure out who the mystery guests are. So we do have mystery guests, and they will be appearing as they do every Wednesday at the online dinner party. We have some other things that participate in that as well. So definitely we're going to have that mystery guest up here and share with you what they've got to say about what they're doing and things along that line. So the mystery guest will be making an appearance very shortly, and we will tell you about that mystery guest once I give their clues out and we start talking to them more. But I think that y'all will enjoy the mystery guest. You will be amazed at who the mystery guest is and all of that. So the mystery guest will be making an appearance very shortly on the screen, and we'll definitely just continue with our mystery guest, and hopefully y'all will be able to figure out who the mystery guest is. Nobody is being bold enough to try it yet. Maybe y'all are just trying to see about how this mystery guest game works before y'all are bold enough to try and be bold enough to see if you've got the skill sets in order to get the mystery guest, because the mystery guest is not an easy one. I try not to make it too easy. We want to make it something that y'all can enjoy and find out at the end who that mystery guest is. So definitely love folks to try their best hand at the mystery guest, but so far nobody is being bold enough to try their hand at figuring out the mystery guest or what the mystery guest is all about. So hopefully somebody will be bold enough and take on the mystery guest challenge. So the mystery guest, nobody figured out Paulie Murray. You heard me talk about Paulie Murray with Reverend Kenney, and also have brought it up in past with other folks as well. So nobody has figured out the mystery guest in 2 weeks of doing the mystery guest, and we may bring you some other games as well. But nobody has challenged or met the challenge of the mystery guest so far. But that doesn't mean that y'all cannot do it or that it will not come to you later on. So definitely we're hoping that folks can figure out the mystery guest at some point, and that y'all will enjoy whoever the mystery guest is. So the mystery guest will be coming your way shortly. Like I said earlier, one is a sports figure and another is a figure that comes out of the world of world of international. So we got a sports figure and we've got an international person. So definitely we're looking forward to sharing that with y'all in the very near future. Like I said, we got about half an hour to go. And definitely I'm looking forward to seeing what folks have got to say. So that being said, I'm going to bring up Sean Dina, and I do know Sean was on the platform earlier and was definitely going to engage y'all in some conversation, but he had to run off. He had an appointment and things of that nature. So we did not get a chance to get to Sean Dina, but I've talked to Sean, and he will make a appearance later on again. So definitely Sean Dina will be sharing with us his music and all of that. So definitely looking forward to folks learning more about what Sean is all about and things of that nature. So I'm actually going to put this back on rerun and let y'all hear Sean Dina's music, which is playing right now. And I'll put that on the full screen so that y'all can check out Sean Dina's songs that are very important to this day.
We struggle to exist. We are not this. Ignorance is not bliss. The land of the free for me is sometimes hit or miss. How could we have fallen so far after centuries of supposed growing? Living your life with your eyes closed is a poor excuse for not knowing. One world, one love, one word too many levels, the rich, the poor, the major, the minority. We all strive, but in order to rise, you must first plant your feet on the ground. So when you stand, you can see. have to try and find a better way. Trying is hard when you live your life in complacency. Think of the future, better days. The future's not written, but the authors need better literacy. We are not this. Don't accept things as they are. We must resist. We have to stand together. Unity, not separation. We must continue to fight. Making changes when we can, helping society rearrange, recognize the wrong and do what's right. This fight was only just begun. The fuse was lit, then reignited, now the fire burns. We won't stop, there's so much work to be done. Make your voices and actions be the tide that turns. Together and united, there's so much we can do. Go from single voices to a movement that makes a change. Put our differences aside, cause we mean me and you. Think another day when our minds will progress and our thoughts will be arranged. We are not this. We are not this. We are not this.
Yes, that was none other than Sean Dina, and he actually wrote that song back in 2016, but still found it very relevant today as well. So even though he wrote that some time back, he still finds it very relevant and is definitely something that he knew that a lot of folks could relate to and that they would be able to talk about. So that's who Sean Dina was singing about, and he is a North Carolina musician living right here in the Triangle, and I'm hoping to get him on. He was actually prepared to possibly be on earlier this afternoon, but then schedule got in the way and other things got in the way, so that did not quite happen, but we will definitely still have great conversations with him and look forward to learning more and more about his journey and things that he's been doing. So definitely that was very interesting, and definitely just interesting to hear what he had to say and more about him. So definitely that was just fascinating, listening to him, listening to what he had to say, and more about what he's all about. So, you know, a number of things are going on in the world, and we're learning more and more about what he's all about, meaning the great Sean Dina and his music. But we also had great interviews today. So like I said, whether it was Fola May sharing things about health and, of course, colon cancer and a number of very other important issues, it was just great to be able to talk to Fola May. And then later on, we had none other than Reverend Carl Kenney sharing his views on everything from Black Lives Matter to civil rights to a number of other things. So it was just great having those conversations. So we're oftentimes having great conversations here on the online dinner party, but we also have like trivia questions as well. So there are a number of things that go on with the online dinner party, and we're always having fun conversations, and we look forward to learning more and more about different people and what they are doing. So it's always great hearing that and definitely being engaged in those conversations. So that's one of the things that's happened. It's just a truly amazing and all of that. So that being said, I've got another clue for you for one of the speakers, so one of our mystery guests. So I'm going to bring that up very shortly. And then after we give you a few minutes of this particular person, then we'll tell you who our mystery folks are, and y'all can go from there, and we will just let it go there. So definitely, I think y'all are in for a definite treat. So I'm about to bring up more of our mystery guests and a audio from them. So I'm going to bring that up, and hopefully y'all will be able to guess the mystery guests. I've given y'all some clues and all of that. So I'm about to bring up another mystery guest clue. This one, an audio / video. So we're going to let y'all hear a little bit of our mystery guests, and hopefully y'all will be able to figure out who the mystery guest is. So definitely that's what we're going to do right now. So here's a little bit of our mystery guest.
Based on what he was preaching. And then the thing that he said after, which was probably more profound to me, is to tell the people to keep the faith. That's something that was like every day, because he felt the pain and he knew the hell that people was going through, people of color, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And at the same time, I remember my father telling me years ago, he's not passing. And I'm looking like, passing what, Daddy? And he said, he's not passing to be a white man. And I remember looking at my father and I said, Daddy, you telling me that people are ashamed of who they are, that they would try and be somebody else? And he said to me, he said, no, son. He said, they're not ashamed, although some of them might be a little overzealous. I didn't know what overzealous meant. So he says to me, he says, son, he says, not that they don't want to be black. On the other side of the street, he said, where white folks live, their standard of life is better. If they can go and have a better standard of life, then they cross over. If their skin is fair skin, that they can pass to being a white man to have a better standard of life. And you know what I equated that to? It's not that people want to leave Cuba and risk their lives coming across the water, or leave Haiti and risk their lives coming across the water, and for us to project and say, well, Cuba is bad or Haiti is bad. They ain't leaving their country because they think their country or their president is bad. They leaving their country and risking their lives for the same reasons those white or fair-skinned individuals cross the line, is because they want a better standard of life. And any man, regardless of what your ethnic background is, you want to have a better standard of life for their families. So I learned these things very early. So I got a hold of Adam Clayton Powell and I put him in my system. There was another guy, Marcus Garvey. I began to study Marcus Garvey because they used to have the Marcus Garvey parade up and down New York and Harlem. And my brother used to be one of the tumblettes flipping the stick in the air and the whole 9 yards. And I used to look at him, but then I began to look away from him and began to look at the symbols that they had behind him in the parade. And then I'm starting to, who is this guy, Marcus Garvey? And what is Marcus Garvey noted for? Marcus Garvey got ships, and he told black people in America, say, hey, man, I got these ships. Get on the ships. Let's go back to Africa so you can meet up with yourself. You can find out who you are. In retrospect, when we look at that today, that's the biggest flaw that black people have. We still, in 2013, don't know who the hell we are as a race of people. So that's one of our biggest problems now with the drug scene, with the filthiness of rap music and the disrespect for seniors and the whole 9 yards, based on the fact that we've been hidden from ourselves. So I studied Marcus, Paul Robeson. I studied Paul Robeson, and that's one of my greatest heroes because this man sacrificed everything for the mere fact that he had everything. He's a baritone singer. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's an entertainer. He's a movie star. He had everything going for him. All he had to do was zip his lip. But it wasn't about him. He said, man, it's about my peers. It's about my neighborhood. It's about my community. It's about those that doesn't have what I have, that can't speak for themselves. So the same thing that I did, he did. He used the talent that he had as a springboard for him to be a voice for people. They call him a communist. They call me a communist. 1968, the same reason. And you know why they called me a communist? Because I had the left arm up opposed to the right arm. Okay, but it didn't stop me or deter me from what the truth is and where I need to go. It didn't stop him. I mean, they took his passport away from him. They did a tremendous amount of things to him, but it didn't break his spirit in terms of where he was going. Then I hear the young individual on the radio one more time. This guy speaking on the radio, and I'm saying, wow, this is profound. Who is this guy? Well, they say his name is Malcolm X. Oh, man, I love what he's saying because I ain't heard nobody outside my father speak the way he's speaking. Now, here's somebody, my father didn't have no corner where he can go get on the box and speak to the community, but he did speak truth in the house. Now, here's a guy on the radio speaking for the world to hear. Who is he? Malcolm X. Name Malcolm X? I didn't know about the Muslim sect. His name is X. Then he said he was coming to head the mosque on 116th Street. Now, 116th Street at that time was drug infested. That's why I put the mosque there, to try and clean up that. And when he went down there, I remember telling my father, I said, Daddy, I'm going down 116th Street to hear Malcolm X. My father said, son, when you go down there, don't you get in no trouble. No, Daddy, I ain't looking for no trouble. I'm going to hear him. Now, I remember going down there and sitting in the front row the first time and listening to him. And when I went in there, the first thing that blew me away is because when I went in there, just like I was looking for Adam Clayton Powell, who is Malcolm X? Which one is Malcolm X? Over there. And Malcolm X was a fair-skinned dude, light-skinned. And I'm looking at him and saying, man, I can't be Malcolm X. This guy's blowing too black for him to be Malcolm X. Sure enough, when he started talking, my lip fell open. It was him. And I'm sitting this close to him to listen to him. And I could just feel the blood just running through my body, man. I couldn't sit still. I was just with excitement for me to be there and see somebody live that I could touch that was talking like that. Because the way he was talking is the way I was feeling because I'm seeing what's happening in my community. And at the same time, when you see these things, man, it's the difference when you see them and your peers don't see them. They still in the basketball. When we was younger, they still in the spinning the bottle. They still in the playing post-offs with the girls. And I'm looking at it's something deeper than that. I don't have time to spin the bottle and play the post office and jumping jacks and then loadies and all. I'm trying to get to the meat of things. And here he is talking the exact same way I was feeling. So then I started to go back. I think the second or third time I went there and asked him, I waited around and I said to him, I said, Mr. X, is it possible I can go with you from this location to your next location? And he looked at me and he smiled. I'll never forget, he had a big dimple in his chin. And he says to me, why do you want to go with me? And I said, because I want to learn. I want to ask you questions. And he liked my answer. And he said, yes, you can come with me. He said, if you can keep up. I didn't know what he meant, keep up, until it dawned on me when I was walking with him was like walking with my two older brothers because they were tall and they were fast walkers. I used to have to jog to keep up with them. But with Malcolm, I had to jog to keep up with him just the same. But I was learning a lot from him, and I had built a bond with him. And when Malcolm X got killed at the Audubon Ballroom, I was supposed to be there that Sunday. And we decided, me and some of the guys that was with Machine and Metal Trades on the track team, that I was going to go try and get my driver's license that Monday. And we took a road trip and drove up to Buffalo, New York. Not Buffalo, but Bear Mountain. And we passed by West Point. And just as we passed by West Point, it came on the news that Malcolm X was shot. Man, we turned around. We shot back to the hospital. By the time we got back to the hospital, he was gone. And everybody was milling around. And I could tell you, man, probably the better part of 40 years.
Well, that's a time clue on our sports figure. U.S. sports figure, the entire mystery guest. And that was a big time clue on who that mystery guest was and everything. So definitely keep that in mind that is a clue as to our mystery guest. And speaking of clues, this is
meet with Marc.
Yes, scrolling across the bottom is the information about one of our mystery guests, and definitely not really a mystery guest. That's actually one of our main guests, so one of our primary live and in-person guests. This is Reverend Carl Kenney's website. So what you're seeing scrolling across the bottom is Reverend Carl Kenney's website. So definitely you can learn more about his books, more about what he's all about with liberation theology, with activism, with his journalism, and much more. So definitely do check that out. You'll see that he's a very powerful brother, and he's doing a lot of great things in our community. So just wanted to have folks have an opportunity to check that out and to see that about him. And now I'm going to bring you up some more clues about mystery guest number 2, as well as our number 1 mystery guest. And hopefully folks in the next 10 or 13 minutes will be able to send us some information about who the mystery guest is. Right now you're seeing things that are either on the non-ticker banner or on the ticker banner telling you about the mystery guest. So this is our sports mystery guest. And definitely you can see that he was definitely very much involved in politics in addition to sports. So like I said, hopefully folks will be able to figure out the mystery guest at the dinner party and be able to tell us who the mystery guest is. So I know a number of folks are always asking for the clues and wanting to know who the mystery guest is, and you will be finding out very shortly who the mystery guest is. Don't forget that the sports figure did play in the Canadian Football League, and they also were involved in the Summer Olympics. So definitely they were involved in a number of things, and you did hear a video of them earlier. So you did hear a video of them without the name being revealed. So like I said, hopefully folks can figure it out, and hopefully they will send me information on Facebook or some other kind of way to let me know that they know who the mystery guest is. So we do have the mystery guest that will be revealed in about 10 minutes. The international mystery guest is this particular person. I'm about to put some of their information out as well. So get ready to show more about some of our mystery guests, and definitely hope that folks will recognize this and try to guess who these folks are. So we're going to get off the sports figures, and we're going to get back to the one that is more internationally renowned. So they did run for political office, and they did not fare well. And they were involved with Renee Viviana, and some of their allies did not like this. So that's some of the clues about them. And definitely they attempted to revive their newspaper as a means to help the war effort. So that was one of those war efforts that they were involved in. So definitely you've seen a variety of clues. I hope folks are thinking of these clues and will try to let folks know who they think it is. They also said feminism owes a great deal to my blonde hairs. And another one is I help the women organize a set of trade unions to improve their working conditions. And this is one of my favorite clues. I had a pet lion named Tiger, and I walked around a famous city with my pet. So it's a famous city somewhere in the world, and they walked around with that pet. They also founded a paper, that's right, exclusively by women and advocating for women's rights. And they were sent to cover an event of Feminist Congress as a humor writer, but it changed their lives. So hopefully folks are thinking about folks like that and trying to figure out who this person could be. It's going to be revealed in about another 10 minutes. Going to an unmarried mother, they were sent to a Roman Catholic convent. So definitely still giving you some more clues, and hopefully folks will be trying to figure out what those clues are. So definitely a number of clues were given, and hopefully folks are able to figure out those clues. I'm even going to be bold and give you another audio clue as well. So we're going to let you hear a little bit more of the interview and reveal some more audio clues as we've got about another 10 minutes. I might give you another 2 minutes of the audio clue. So do keep that in mind. We're going to let you hear some more of this particular guest, and hopefully y'all will be able to figure out who it is and can figure out the clues that I have been given. So like I said, trying to give you a lot of different clues, and hopefully somebody will be bold enough to take it up and try to figure out who the person is. So, like I said, nobody's been bold enough to get it so far, but we're going to see if y'all can figure it out, and definitely hoping that somebody will figure it out in the next 9 minutes. So definitely we're going to see if folks can figure out who this person person might be. So, like I said, we're going to see if we can't get it on, and if folks cannot figure out who it might be. But so far, it's just kind of rolling along. It doesn't want to tell us anything. So we're just going to stop that right there, and we're going to go further up and see if we can't let y'all hear more of this particular person and what they've got to say and all of that. So
from the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
We're going to stop that right there, and we're just going to let y'all have some more ideas of who did the interview and what the clues might be. But so far, nobody has figured it out, but we're going to see if we can get y'all some idea of the interview and bring up some more of the interview and see if we can't have y'all figure out who the mystery guest is. Because like I said, I think that y'all might be shocked and all of that. So we're going to see if y'all can't figure out the mystery guest, and I'm going to bring out some more of what they've got to say and give you a little bit more. Then we'll come back with the reveal as to who our mystery guest is. But right now we're going to pull up some more and see if we can't have y'all have some clues as to who the mystery guest might be. And then also I might talk about a holiday that was just revealed that it will be a new holiday here in this area. So we're going to see if y'all can figure out what's going on and more about things along that line. So here's a little bit more.
Shorts, my jock, everything all right here on the field. Guys out there playing football. That time, if a black man dropped the football, they call him all kind of stupid this and stupid that and the whole 9 yards, you know. And a lot of them was caught in a quandary where I couldn't figure out why they was accepting this. I figured it out later. And that was because if they'd have left school, they'd have been drafted before they can get into another school. They'd have been right in Vietnam. It took me a while to figure that one out. Why wouldn't you step up and say certain things? You know, they wouldn't do it. So anyway, I took all my stuff and threw it in his face, and I said, man, I'm done. And I went inside and ripped my name off the locker, took all my stuff, took it over by the thing, and I'm in the shower, and he comes up in the shower and says, son, I might have been a little hasty. And I'm looking at him and say, Delma, leave here. Leave here. Because I was so mad, man, you about to die in here. Just leave. And I remember calling my wife and telling my wife, start packing. We leaving. My wife was working for, this guy was the mayor of the town, but he was the chairman of the journalist department too. Now, my wife got the job with him. Incidentally, I might add, my wife gave up a job. She was the executive secretary for one of the generals over on Ellis Island. So, I don't think it was Ellis Island, another island over there. Anyway, she's general. So when we got down there, they promised all the jobs, you know, like the bus trips and the whole 9 yards. We got there with none of that. So when I said to them, I said, look, y'all don't have nothing for my wife, I'm gone. And all of a sudden, she got the job with this guy.
All right, folks. Well, that was picked up, even though I see some more eyes watching the show and things of that nature. So hopefully they're trying to figure out the mystery guest and trying to figure out who that mystery guest was. But just to let you know, another news item that just took place is that Orange County here in North Carolina is another place that has made Juneteenth a holiday. So absolutely they're going to do Juneteenth as a holiday in order to commemorate the emancipation of the enslaved people. And that's going on in Orange County, which is also the county where Chapel Hill is. So that took place. Orange County employees will take June 19th off starting next year to celebrate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The Orange County Board of Commissioners voted unanimously Tuesday to make June 19th or Juneteenth the county's 12th paid holiday. The change is expected to cost taxpayers roughly $61,000 in salaries and benefits, according to county staff reports. So the lone commissioner that is black, that being Renee Price, proposed the change back in July. So This really is to acknowledge that Juneteenth really is a day of freedom for African Americans. Price said for years we'd go along with July 4th with other folks having that as a major holiday, but it really was not a freedom day for people of color and African descent. So the town boards in Hillsborough and Carrboro, the Raleigh City Council, and the Wake County Board of Commissioners approved the paid holiday earlier this summer. The Chapel Hill Town Council, the Durham County Board of Commissioners, and the Durham City Council are expected to consider the move later this year, according to elected officials. So here in North Carolina, and as Carl talked about, this area is definitely a leader in progressive thought and progressive ideas. So that's an example of a small example of how that works. So definitely we have seen that in society, that sometimes that happens and folks try to find amazing things that might be of interest to them. So definitely that is what that was all about and things of that nature. And now it is time for us to reveal our mystery guest. So the first mystery guest I will be bringing up very shortly, and that will be coming up as well. That's the gentleman that y'all have been hearing talking. I did bring up a couple of his interviews and things of that nature. I will bring up the picture first, and some of you may not recognize him, but our mystery guest is none other than this gentleman right here. So as I was saying, that is our mystery guest, and that is, of course, the great John Carlos. John Carlos was one of the folks at the 1968 Olympics who held his fist in the Black Power symbol. So that is one of our mystery guests, none other than John Carlos. So John Carlos is one of our mystery guests, and as you can see, that is Mr. Carlos and all of that. So that is one of our mystery guests, none other than John Carlos. So one of our mystery guests is John Carlos. So just keep that in mind, that is one of our mystery guests and all of that. So just remember that a mystery guest that we are loving to show you is none other than John Carlos. So that's one of the mystery guests, one of our two mystery guests, and of course many folks will remember him more for this famous picture. And I will actually remove myself from the stream. Added me to the stream. And then our other mystery guest, the international one known for her having a pet lion, is none other than Marguerite Durand. Or Marguerite Durand is a woman from Paris who is known for her feminism, for her journalism. So I felt it was good to have a journalist on as a mystery guest, particularly since I had Kenney on as well. So this is our mystery guest. In this case, none other than Marguerite Durand. And as you can see, she's got her lion with her. That's right, the lion is being shown, and you can see the lion as well. So that is Marguerite Durand. So she is our other mystery guest. Marguerite Durand is our other mystery guest for this particular edition of the show. So, and of course, John Carlos. So those were our mystery guests, none other than John Carlos and, of course, Marguerite Durand. So Marguerite Durand, and there, as you see, that is her lion as well. And then, of course, we've got John Carlos. So those were our two mystery guests for this edition of the online dinner party. So definitely want to thank folks for participating in the show and for actually enjoying the conversations that we were having. So I did have some folks that were definitely looking at what we were doing and enjoying what we were doing in the terms of the conversation on the online dinner party. Definitely we saw some folks that jumped into the conversation and letting us know that they were watching also. So we're going to have some more great guests next week. Definitely we're looking forward to having some great conversations, and we're looking forward to even more conversations around different issues and things along that line. So here to wrap the show up, and I want to thank everybody for joining us here at the online dinner party. It was another amazing dinner party. Like I said, I want to thank Reverend Carl Kenney for being one of my guests, and also want to thank none other than Dr. Fola May for being our first guest. So we We talked about everything from health to other important issues, and I want to thank you folks for joining us here on the online dinner party. So definitely want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll be back with more contests next week. So far, y'all are not doing good in the contest factor, and y'all are not doing a good job of winning, but that's okay. We do know that things can improve in the near future. So I'm about to go to another meeting, and then I'll be back hopefully on the Gamers Den tomorrow. But I did enjoy the conversation, did enjoy talking to my guests, as well as having you folks listen. So if you've not caught this show in the live version, and by the way, if you go to the rerun, you cannot play the game and win, because that means that you basically cheated. But you can enjoy the show and the interview. So if you go back to Twitter or Periscope or Twitch, and definitely if you go to Facebook and YouTube, you can find this show in its rerun, and I think that you'll find some engaging conversation. So that being said, I'm going to head on out of here, go to another meeting, and I hope that everybody has a great Wednesday and a great remainder of the week. But until next week, we'll see you, and y'all have a productive week ahead, as well as a great and fun weekend. It is a very difficult times within the middle of the pandemic, but whether it's reading, whether it's watching TV, whether it's looking at movies or whatever, we can find ways to at least enjoy ourselves even in these hard times. We do know that these are hard economic times, as well as hard times for a lot of folks revolving around health. So whatever you do, stay safe. Remember to wear your mask. Remember to wash your hands, and definitely remember to socially distance. So do all of the things that the folks are telling you to do, and that they are encouraging us to do as we continue this battle against this pandemic, and we try to make this a much better society. And hopefully when we come out on the other side, the world will be an even better world than it is right now. So I know we're in the middle of some difficult times, not just here in the United States, but globally. But hopefully things will be continuing to improve. That's my prayer and my thought. And on that note, I'm going to end the online dinner party. I will be bringing up the ambassador, because I do need to bring up the ambassador and the IBM closing as well. It would not be a show without bringing up those things also. So I do need to go down there and get those in order to successfully close out the show. So that being said, I'm going to go down here and find our lovely ambassador. And there's the ambassador.
कोरोना वायरस से कैसे बचेंगे? हैंड होकर और ऐसे अपने खांसी जब आएगी तो ऐसे करेंगे अच्छू अच्छू और कोरोना वायरस को धन्यवाद हमारा म्यूजिक सुनने का.
And of course, now here's a little information about IBM TV, and then that will actually totally wrap up the show.
I'm looking for fear. But a man tell you that somebody told him